if you go up to what you're afraid of, but you know in your heart you have to do. Mm-hmm. That's where you will achieve greatness.
High performers seek clarity more often than their peers. Every situation they go into, they're seeking clarity and setting intention.
How do you strategize and plan for something that's been told is impossible? You're stepping into the unknown. It's by being...
If you are struggling to master productivity in your life, then look no further, because in this video, I bring you some of the most productive and successful people in the world to teach you how to master productivity. Make sure to like this video right now, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment below on your biggest takeaway. Every time you do one of these experiences, you have a strategy. You don't just say, okay, I'm gonna just push through until I'm dead.
Yeah.
You have a strategy, and it sounds like Jenna's really helping you craft this strategy. But how does someone, for me in this physical challenge, like I got up and I did one lap, and then I was like, okay, let me do one more.
Yeah.
And then one more, and I was like, okay, now we have 2 more to go.
Yeah.
We can finish this. How do people push through these mental or physical challenges when it seems like, gosh, it's gonna take me 10 years to launch a podcast like what Lewis has, or 10 years to build this business or to do this thing? How do people push through that barrier, and how do you do it?
For me, people love to ask me about my physical training. How do I get strong? There's some fun stories about the crazy training that I did to prepare for this and whatnot. But I believe that it's the muscle 6 inches between your ears. It's about flexing your mind is really what it comes down to. And I describe that moment of Jen and I writing our dreams onto this whiteboard. Sadly, as you know, that's where 99.9% of dreams die as an idea, because all of a sudden we have these doubts in our mind. Oh, I can't, or it's going to take 10 years, or I could never catch up to this person, or this metric, or that metric. But it's about showing up. It's about getting out there every single day. So in Antarctica, and it's also the ability to be able to adapt. So actually, my first day in Antarctica, I think, is really emblematic of that. And to be fair about the 29 event, you're like, Colin, what are you doing in a couple weeks? You seem like you're in pretty good shape. And I was like, well, I'm going to try to cross Antarctica by myself in like 2 weeks, literally like 2 weeks before I was leaving. So I was pretty well trained at that moment. But I get out there. We've been planning this project for well over a year. It's a world first. No one's ever done it. There's so many doubters and naysayers. Someone actually died 100 miles from the finish line 3 years ago trying this project. Another one of the best explorers in the world went out there the following year, and after 52 days ran out of food and had to be picked up and didn't make it. So there's a lot of people. There's a lot of print articles and big magazines saying it's physically impossible to do this thing. And so I know that going in. And so we build this strategy. And the unsupported nature means you can't take any extra supplies with you. Basically, what you have in your sled to start, no one can give you anything, essentially. And so in that case, weight is of the essence. And so I pack my sled as much of food and as much fuel. The fuel, I melt the ice into water, and I don't bring extra anything. I literally don't even have an extra pair of underwear with me for 54 days because I can't. I'd rather have 100 more calories in my sled of food.
Same underwear
for 54 days.
Straight.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Not fancy.
That's some soggy underwear right there.
Yeah. That's not.
Oh
that's
man.
Nice. But
you clean it at least? You try to? You
no,
can't.
not much. You
can't.
just kind of ride it out.
Wow, man.
So no, not smelling
One
good.
day of chafing and you're done too.
Yeah. So you gotta look after your body. But I get out there, I fly, this plane lands me on the edge of the Antarctic continent, takes off, I'm all alone out there, right? I've dropped off alone. Actually, you had mentioned before there was another guy out there, which is important to mention at this point, because another British explorer, one of the most experienced in the world in terms of the amount of miles traversed in Antarctica and various other projects, he also decides that he wants to try to be the first. So not only am I now racing history, but this guy's a British Navy SEAL equivalent, special forces guy. His name's Lou Rudd, and he's a badass, and he wants to do this as well. It was his friend who died 3 years ago. Wow. He's doing that to honor him, and I got a lot of respect for all of them. There's a camaraderie as well, of course, and we both know what we're going through, but we also both clearly want to be first. And he's looking at me like, who's this, bit younger guy who doesn't have the real experience in Antarctica? Who does he think he is? And I'm kind of trying to be confident in my plan. And so plane drops us off. We're at a mile apart from each other, equidistant from the first waypoint, the first GPS marker on the map. And I get out there, and I've got this video of me being it's a blue sky day. It's great. After all year of planning, it's finally time for me to try to cross Antarctica. I'm taking the first step, and I bend down and to pull the strap on my sled to tighten it for the first time, and ping, the strap breaks. No Literally, way. The strap breaks. It's minus 25, and the plastic can't handle it, breaks. So right out of the gate, I'm wow, this is going to be a long journey. This is before the first step. So then I strap into my sled, and the sled's the heaviest on the first day. 375 pounds to start was about the maximum I thought I could pull. So I put as much food as I could, even though I knew I was going to burn 10,000 calories per day, and I factored I could carry about 7,000 calories. So I was going to lose weight every single day straight from the get-go, even eating 7,000 calories. That's how intense and cold it is. And so I start pulling my sled, and you asked me before about sweat. About 1 hour in, I'm sweating, and I'm like, wait, this sled's so heavy, but I can't not pull it without sweating. And so I start sweating. Then I realize I actually don't think I can pull this sled, and I start crying. I literally start crying. But what happens when you cry when it's minus 25 degrees out? It freezes to your face. So I have frozen tears to my face, and I'm 1 hour, 2 hours into this journey. And so I do the only thing I could think of is I call home to Jenna.
Wow.
And so I pick up the phone and I go, hey babe, yeah, we may have named our project the right thing. It appears to be impossible. Because we had called it the impossible first.
Wow.
And she's like, uh-oh. And so she tries to, she's like, okay, well, and meanwhile, I'm seeing Lou disappear on the horizon with this beautiful, like, ski stroke, like, totally knows what he's doing, like, strong and steady out there. And, like, at this point, I can't even think about the fact that there's a race in place. I mean, I'm just trying to, like, get through the first day. And so she says to me, Colin, how far are you from the first waypoint? Like, she knows the route. We've studied it. She knows everything. The first waypoint's only a few miles from the drop-off point. And I'm like, I'm 0.63 miles from, it's as if I'm saying it's 1,000,000 miles. But she's like, okay, so you're half a mile from the first waypoint? Like, and this goes back to your original question of strategy, right? And she's like, do me a favor. Like, whatever you do, I know it's heavy. I know you're sweating. I know you're exhausted, and you're probably a little bit afraid, understandably. Like, get to the first waypoint. Get to that first waypoint, and you'll have felt like you got somewhere on the first day. So for the next hour, I struggled and battled and get to that first waypoint, set up my tent, get inside my tent, and I say to Jenna, like, I call her again, it's kind of our safety check at night off the sat phone. She's like, how you doing? I was like, obviously I'm stressed. She says, look, I actually went out there intentionally with not a lot of music, not a lot of podcasts, because I wanted to explore the silence of these flow states that I hope to tap into in my mind, something I'm very curious about, the sort of mental side of this. And she goes, tomorrow, do me a favor. Try to find the flow, even if just for a minute or 2 minutes. It's going to be a hard day. And so just those words, I went to sleep and I was like, okay, I made it to the first waypoint. I'll get up tomorrow and kind of regroup. And then I woke up, and I'm big on mantras, but this mantra had never been with me before this, and just came to me out loud as my alarm went off to wake me up on my first real full day out there. I said out loud to myself, I said, Colin, you are strong, you are capable. You are strong, you are capable. And that ended up being my mantra every single day, waking up for the rest of the entire 54-day journey. And sure enough, that next day, was it stupid challenging? Yes, but instead of 2 miles, I made it 8 miles. And I found that flow state for a minute. The next day was 9 miles, and I found that flow for 2 or 3 minutes. And so we had a strategy. It went out the window on day one. Had to refocus on the mind, adjust a few things with our strategy, because I was hoping to go further distances in that. She's like, well, like, maybe it's not shorter distances at first, but as it gets lighter, maybe it'll go longer, and all this kind of stuff. And so, how do you strategize and plan for something that's been told is impossible? You're stepping into the unknown. It's by being adaptable and ultimately realizing that these things are happening in our minds, these doubts, these fears. That's a human thing. I don't care who you are. I still have them. I have 4 world records, and I've had, some bit of success in my life through challenges. But like, I wake up every day with doubts and fears and challenges, but it's being able to quiet that in my mind and continue to get to that first waypoint or get to that next step forwards in whatever you're doing.
Man, what did you do to get into flow every day then? Besides the mantra, how did you get into flow, and how did you stay into it? Yeah,
so that's something that I've just been fascinated with. So I grew up as a kid as a swimmer, and it's funny. I have 5 older sisters actually, and I'm the baby boy, and an older brother as well. But I'm a little boy of 7, blended family, but a big family, a loving, supportive environment. And my sisters and my parents would always be like, "You're always talking all the time. You're always this." Like, I was trying to hang out with them, follow my sisters into their room, like always like chatting and all this kind of stuff. But what I realized is I spent 4 hours a day as a kid swimming, 2 hours before school, 2 hours after school, putting in those reps of quiet. Swimming's this weird sport where you're staring at a
Can't
black
talk.
line, like you can't talk, there's no eye contact, there's no, really can't really chat to your teammates even, you're kind of in this zone. And so before I knew the word flow state or high performance, this is me as a kid, I realized I was sort of tapping in and out of those states. And I became more conscious of that as I went through my life and became a professional triathlete after a whole other crazy tangent of my life, being severely burned in a fire in Thailand and being told I would never walk again. We can talk about that if you want.
Yeah.
But the more so, what happened when I was racing triathlon is a friend of mine came to me and she said, I don't know much about sports. There's this Turkish woman who's a wife of a good friend of mine named Ece, and she says, I don't know much about sports, but just by observing this, I see that like this is all in your guys' minds out here. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. Like,
Talking about swimming or the
this was
outdoor
triathlon.
stuff?
So this
Oh,
is
yeah.
triathlon. And this is when I was racing triathlon professionally. And she said, I'd recommend that you go to these meditation retreats. And I was like, cool, I'm interested in meditation, but I don't know a lot about it. I haven't done it. This is 2011. And she's like, yeah, if you heard of Vipassana meditation, it's these 10-day silent meditation retreats, 10 days, no reading, no writing, no eye contact, deep meditation. And she's like, you should try it. And I was like, well, don't I need like a little background in meditation before this? And she's like, no. Like, just do it. It's free. There's centers around the world. It's completely free to go. Like, go. And so me being the kind of like jump in head first type of person, as you could probably tell here, I was like, great, I'll go. So my off season in triathlon that year, I signed up for this meditation retreat. And my stepdad, he drives me up to the retreat and he goes, hey Colin, like I've pretty much never heard you shut up for a minute in your life. And so I'm going to wait here in the parking lot for an hour because once you realize this is a terrible idea, I'll be here waiting to drive you home. Joking. He's my stepdad is this amazing mentor and influence in my life, incredible man. But he's literally going like, you're pretty extroverted and you're telling me you're going to sit in silence by yourself for 10 days. Sure enough, I stayed for those 10 days and it had just a profound impact on my life of learning about that self-awareness in my mind, in my brain, etc. And so from that practice, which I've gone back to the 10-day retreat, I try to go every single year if I can, done several, and as well as have a daily practice with it. I've kind of taken that into my canvas, into my artwork, into my sport, and this curiosity of the mind and where we can go in our mind and brain. And so one of my deep curiosity about Antarctica, honestly, was unlocking the physical potential inside of me, but as a gateway to do that, exploring the mind. And what better place to be alone in this endlessly white landscape. The sun never sets. There's no change of days. There's no dark. It's a blank white canvas. And like I said, I literally deleted almost all the media from my iPhone as to not. I actually had a couple School of Greatness podcasts, a couple of Ritual podcasts, a few podcasts, and a few albums out there. I listened to some Paul Simon Graceland, a couple others, but there's very few. I spent 80-90% of the time in complete silence. And it was a beautiful thing to explore that. So how did I tap into that flow? Like I said, some of the times it was 30 seconds. Some of the times it was a minute or two. But as I kept on these repetition of days exploring this place in my mind, sometimes it was days, 2 days, 3 days, where the sequence of days would come through in high performance. And the stakes are high. It's 50, 60 mile per hour winds. If I let go of my tent, I have no shelter. It's gone. It's 80 degrees wind chill, minus 80 degrees wind chill. But I'm finding the space in my mind that is locked in and calm. And the most profound experience of that was actually on my very last day. So it's worthy of mentioning, after the 6th day, I did catch up to Mr. Captain Lou Rudd and surpassed him and ended up in front of him the rest of the time. And I, on the 52nd day, I woke up and I'm 77 miles away from the finish. And I'm thinking it's about 3 days, probably, give or take that. It's Christmas morning, and I wake up and I get outside of my tent, and the deepest flow state of my entire life just comes over me. I just realize, I recognize it, I say my mantra, I tap in, and I start exploring. When I'm in the deepest flow states, I'm also hyper aware. And so I start thinking, like, how many more miles do I have to go? How much time would that take? Oh, it's 3 days, but what if I did it back to back? What if I did it in one big final push? I've never gone more than 33 miles in an individual day, and I average about 15 to 17 miles a day. So I'm 77 miles away from the finish, and I'm 53 days in this expedition. But I get into this place in my mind that's so deep, where I feel this strength and this power and this flow, that I start to say to myself, whoa, we have this capacity as humans, not me, but as humans. And I'm tapped into the vibration of my family and friends and the school kids that are following along, and just this radiant positivity that I'm shining out, but receiving back in such a significant way, that I tap into this flow. And for the next 32 hours, I don't stop.
Wow.
I continue onwards. I have to stop at hour 18 to put up my tent to melt a little bit of snow to get some more water because I'd ran out of water. Call home to my family. It's Christmas night. It's 7 p.m. for them on Christmas night. They're all gathered together. They're like, you did your best day ever. 18 hours. I can't believe it. You're almost a day or two from the finish. And I was like, I'm not stopping. I'm still going. And my mother, who's been a huge influence in my life, and certainly Jenna, my sister, these strong women who have just been like these amazingly positive influences on my life, they hear it in my voice. And of course, as a mother or as a wife or as a sister, you're a little bit worried. Your person is out there in this intense environment, but they reflect now as they've told me the story from their point of view, and they have it recorded on Christmas Day, this conversation that we had, and they were like, we could hear it in your voice. Wow. You were more focused and more clear than you've ever been. And they just said, I can't wait to hear from you in 12 hours. You're going to cross this finish line and create history.
Wow.
Go live your destiny. And it was just this beautiful, beautiful moment of the mind. And I think, I'll say coming back home and it was asked all these questions in the media and press, which is, super humbling. And this question that kept coming up and it keeps coming up, which is, Colin, are you superhuman? And my question is simple. It's like, yeah, I'm superhuman. And so are you. And so are you. Like what I'm tapping into in my mind is accessible to all of us. And like, yes, you may not want to walk across Antarctica by yourself. In fact, I don't blame you for not wanting to do that for seriously. But like whatever it is, you talk about business, entrepreneurship, innovation, music, art, love, creation, positivity, whatever that is, like that is within us. And that's what I tapped into out there, which is the most special thing for me to come back and be able to share is that resonant positivity and the power that we all have within us.
In one interview with one of the world's largest CTOs, Chief Technology Officers, he said, Brendan, they're a top 10 brand in the world. He said, we don't, he said, my team, he said, I'm not creative. My team's not creative, but we know how to execute and scale. And execution and scale is really important to long-term high performance. Creativity might get you in the game, but a lot of people are creative but can't work their way out of a bag. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I would have argued that forever because I'm a creative, I'm a writer and a coach. And I would have never thought that. Age, nationality, ethnicity, and here's a big one, compensation. Here's a big one, personality. Here's a big one, strengths. They are not correlated strongly with high performance. Some of them have weak correlations. Mm-hmm. And all those things, by the way, because if academics are listening to that, they're like, no, he's wrong. And this is tied towards high performance. It's not that those aren't important. Those things can shape your mood. They can shape, lots of important life outcomes, well-being, health, happiness. But when we're talking about high performance, those are less important than these 6. And what I keep telling people is, I'm not saying those aren't important. These just happen to be more important. So the 6 habits, you want me to do those?
Sure, yeah.
So the personal habits, and these are the ones that move the needle the most. Mm-hmm. Number 1, high performers, you like this one. High performers seek clarity more often than their peers. Mm. And what that means for them is every situation they go into, they're seeking clarity and setting intention. And it's not like once in a while, they're doing it way more often. It's like, I've been blessed to work with Oprah Winfrey. When she has a meeting, at the start of every meeting, she asks, what's our intention here? Mm. What's the intention of this meeting? Not what's the agenda, what do I do? What's the intention? That's every meeting. So she's seeking clarity at the beginning of every meeting. That's why she's so amazing, right? If you think about her whole career, she was always trying to have people seek clarity on who they were so they could be themselves. That's what high performers are doing. They just do it more often. They seek clarity before they shoot that video, before they have the podcast interview. But specifically, we found 3 practices help you get better at seeking clarity. Number 1, they are seeking clarity in what we call the future 4. So you've probably heard that successful people are more future-minded. Mm-hmm. It's true. And specifically what they're looking at, if you talk to a high performer, they're more clear about who do I want to be in this upcoming situation. And by the way, it's not about who I am, it's about who do I want to be. They're more future-oriented. They're more intentional about who they want to be in social situations. So it's like, I want to have this type of interaction with Lewis today. Mm-hmm. That's intentional. They're more clear about what skills they need to develop to reach their next level of success.
Right.
Here's how you really know an underperformer. Open up their calendar and look for any evidence that they have planned their own curriculum for greatness. If they don't have classes or courses, if they're not actively skill building, there's no chance of high performance. I mean, maybe they can dumb luck into it for initial success, but high performance is long-term success. You got to be building your skill
Constantly
sets.
growing, constantly
Yes.
learning, constantly growing.
Being aware of that. And the last of the future 4 is I know the service I want to provide in the future. Talk to any high performers I'm sure you've interviewed. They kind of know the service and the difference they want to make. Maybe not precisely, but they're asking the question. So that's some of what we know. They seek clarity. And that's kind of the first practice is asking questions in those areas. And the other two real fast is when you're seeking clarity, they're more clear about the feeling they want to have. Like an Olympic sprinter who's won gold is more likely to have said before he went or she went on the track, how do I want to feel out there? Not like just the result, like when the foot's in the block and I'm arms down, like what do I want to feel? Like they're very aware of the feeling they're trying to get.
Yeah, I don't want to feel nervous and stressed. I want to feel calm and clear and smooth. And
And they're doing that self-talk, which is seeking clarity. And then the last one, which is really important, they're clear about what's meaningful to them now and what might be different in the future, which is something I didn't know until we did a lot of the interviews or the conversations. Is a lot of people kind of know what I like now. They know what their passion is, but it's like, what's going to be meaningful to you later, like in 5 years? They've thought about that. I would say they've done the work. So that's just the first habit. And so the book kind of opens with that story of like finding we all have to decide who we are and what we want and how to get it at this stage of our life. And when we don't know that, reaching high performance can be really hard.
Yeah. It's all about clear vision for me. It's the first chapter in my book is the greatest leaders in the world have a clear vision.
Love that.
Yeah.
That's it. And they got that vision by seeking clarity.
Yes.
That was the habit that gave them the vision. They were consistently seeking, like, they asked themselves more questions. That's one of our findings. They literally are doing more of the self-talk, asking more of the questions, which is so important.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
And I love how you talked about this. You say the world cares less about your strengths and personality than about your service and meaningful contributions. Then why do so many of us focus on our strengths and personality?
Yeah.
Do you think?
That was a huge finding. That's another one. I would have completely freaked out on anybody.
Strength Finders, all these other books out there, it's like we focus on our strengths.
And unfortunately, that's in the history of personal development, that is the greatest false dichotomy that there's ever been. Focus on your strengths, it's like you have to do both. You have to do both. But what we found in our research, which surprised me, high performers do not report working on their strengths any more than regular people. So that's not what gives them the edge. One of the chapters opens up with this guy who wrote this email, really highly successful guy. And he wrote this email to me, says, and I'd put him through all this. I put him through StrengthsFinder, the Berkman, the Colby, the Myers-Briggs, put him through everything. This is one of my first coaching clients ever. I knew everything about him. We knew all his background. We did all the homework. Had his peer review, his 360 assessments from work. And then I watched him fail for 2 years. And he wrote me this email and he said, Brendan, stop telling me like what successful people are like because we know my strengths. I'm not getting ahead, and start telling me what they do. And that's what this book became about. It's like, what do you need to do? Because, and in this email he wrote this, which is where that finding came from. He said, this was so good. Listen to this line. He said, as a leader, I have to be honest with myself that my mission and vision should never be made to bow down to my limited human strengths. I should have to rise up to my mission or vision. The strengths aren't the relevant thing. The question is, what is necessary for me to develop into to reach that mission? It's like, your strengths are great. And it's like, yes, of course do your strengths. But that's kind of like, what I tell people is like, let's imagine you have a bear, and that bear wants to go on top of this cliff over here, and it's never been on the cliff, and it wants to get that new honey up there, right? Telling the bear to focus on its strengths, to go somewhere it's never gone before and do something it's never done before is stupid. It's like saying, hey, you know what? Just try being more of a bear.
Right.
If you say, Brendan, I got this big new vision, I just say, just try being more of Lewis. I mean, it's at a spiritual level that feels good. But you and I both know you're going to have to develop far beyond your comfort zones. And strengths are typically comfort zones. We got to overcome that and go to the next level.
And develop new skills and overcome certain fears and all these other things that are going to help us get to the next level. Is that right? Or?
Yeah. The whole conversation of beyond the comfort zone really requires us to go beyond our strengths. It really requires us.
That is our comfort zone.
That is our comfort zone.
What we already know, what we're good at.
And the problem with the Strengths Finder and all of the strengths-based movement is the assumption, and they're all written academically this way, based on what are called innate strengths. An innate strength is the assumption that you had that from birth, and that those innate strengths are what you focus on. And I'm like, well, if you had it at birth, you probably had it when you were 15 years old too. So if it's innate, you had it at 15. Are the strengths you had at 15 sufficient to serve you at 50? Hell no. You need to develop beyond what's innate and go to a whole other level. And so I take on strengths in the book in that way but I also say it almost doesn't matter, because a lot of people have strengths and they suck at work because they're not doing these habits. A lot, I mean, how many people do you know I know who are amazingly strong and their strengths finders are amazing and they don't do anything all day?
That's it. Yeah. A lot of people. I mean, in the sports world, there's a lot of great, talented people who had the greatest gifts, but they still weren't able to win.
Yeah.
Or they were lazy, or they wouldn't, hustle or sacrifice their body because they just relied on their talents, their strengths.
Yep.
And so they were never able to get to the championship game or get on the best teams because
said it.
And they had all the talent in the world, and you're just like, if I was as gifted as this person, I would be incredible.
Yes. I mean, that's the whole thing about the talent code or a lot of newer research in performance. It just says what's more important is what you do with what you got to develop into the vision of the mission you need to serve. And so the book kind of lays out a lot of the science behind that, and then goes into, obviously most of it's oriented towards the 6 habits.
So in terms of clarity, what is that habit that you take on a daily or monthly basis with clarity? What do you think about? You're like, every morning, what am I clear about? Or, how do you apply that habit to your life?
I apply it in a couple ways. First, for me, every situation I go into, I'm consistently asking, like, what's the feeling I want to have here? If you ever see me teach, it's often, I would say, bring the joy. So I have joy triggers that I've set up in my mind that makes me more intentional about things. So, for example, I have a door frame trigger. Whenever I walk through a door, I say, bring the joy. So when I walk through that door right there, it's like, bring the joy into this room. It's just a mental trigger that I've set up for myself. Every morning in the shower, I ask myself 3 questions. And not that I shower every morning, but the ones I do, the first question I say, what can I be excited about today? So it forces me to be clear about what's going to draw joy, enthusiasm from me. Number 2, I say, what might trip me up today? Because usually I know what's going on in the day. I'm like, what might mess me up? Where I might not perform well? What might bother me? And number 3, I say, what can I do to surprise somebody today? To give a gift of appreciation or acknowledgement today. And so I think through that in the morning. So I think that helps me begin my day pretty clear. Then when I sit down before I do work, I literally look at my calendar of the day. I did this morning. And I look at whatever's going on in the day, and I think about it for 20 minutes. It's one of my 20-minute routines in the morning. I literally think about my calendar for 20 minutes a day. And people think that's crazy. But what I'm thinking through when I'm looking at the calendar, I'm like, okay, I'm going to have that call. What do I want to happen on that call? What's my intention for that call? What's my goal for that call? What's the feeling for that call? How do I want to end that call? I'm going to have that time with Lewis. Like, how do I want to be there? And how can I make sure I enjoy it? Because it's a big deal. I love your show. I want to do a good job. I want to share something good for the people, even though I have no idea what you're going to ask.
Right.
In this, I want to be present for that and make sure I'm really there, even though maybe I have a head cold today. It's like it's like just thinking through it. I think that helps me. It keeps me asking questions. Every Sunday, I do a life arenas assessment. That just means I think there's 10 areas of our life, and I score myself in them. And this is about my 11th year of doing this.
Wow.
So each area of my life, from emotional quality to happiness to relationships to time to hobby, etc. I just give myself a score of 1 to 10. And 1 means I suck, and I was horrible in the previous week on that. 10 means I did a good job. And then I ask, how can I do better? It's my Sunday routine. Yeah. And it just keeps me clear. And it's not like I don't sometimes, like everyone else, wonder what's going on or what I'm doing. But those habits, those were my habits.
What's the biggest lesson you've learned in the last decade for you?
That things, first of all, keep getting better. I think in our society, especially as it relates to, as you get older, at least in my family, there was a lot of kind of cultural expectations like, oh, over this age, it kind of starts going down, or you know what I mean? You peak when you're young, and that's when all the good stuff happens. And for me, I feel like it keeps getting better. And I love that the best years are still ahead of me, and that all the stuff that I've been through, there's like all of these exciting new possibilities. So that's one of the biggest lessons. And I think the other one is that I don't have to stress as hard. Like, as a human being, I have a really strong work ethic, but I also tend to put a lot of pressure on myself. And the other lesson I've learned is that I don't need to do that the work actually gets done more joyfully and more creatively if I don't add on that additional layer of pressure and stress.
Why do you pressure yourself?
I have really high expectations. I want to take care of my team. I want to take care of my family. I want to do right by my customers. Like with this book, I wanted to do right by my publishing partners. And I always feel a sense of responsibility to make sure that I'm taking care of people. And embedded in that, I have historically put a ton of pressure on myself to make sure, that the buck stops with me. But I think recently it's been really great to see how awesome it is to collaborate with people who are like, girl, I got this. Like, you're good. You go do your thing. I'll do my thing, and we'll create something together that's magic. And I've been like, this is amazing.
Don't stress about it. Yeah. What's been the biggest challenge in the last 10 years?
I think the biggest challenge for me in the past decade, that's a good question.
You started Marie TV, what, 8 years ago? 9?
Yeah, so to put this all in context, so I've been doing what I've been doing for 20 years now.
Yeah.
So creating free content via email, back starting in like 2000, 2001, which seems like
crazy,
insane. Then blogging, and then I got Kuma in 2009. Kuma's my dog, my toy Australian
Sweet little
Shepherd.
dog.
He's a sweet little pup. And here's the thing, when we first got him as a puppy and I was training him along with Josh, I didn't have time to write as many.
Josh?
No, training Kuma along with Josh. Josh knew what he was doing. I was just like, what do I do with a puppy?
Yeah.
I didn't have as much time to write blog posts, and so I just started opening my webcam on my MacBook Pro and talking right into the camera.
I remember those early videos.
Yeah, they're still on the site.
Yeah.
And so Marie TV was actually started not because I had some big vision for like a show that I wanted to do. It was actually because I didn't have much time because I had a really cute new puppy and I needed to get consistent content out, and I felt much more comfortable and it was faster to talk into my webcam than it was to construct a blog post. So that's how Marie TV started back in like 2009/2010.
So it's been almost 10 years. It'd be 10 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I think one of the challenges of the past decade has just been to continue to stay really present with all of the work while continuing to grow the company, like making sure that folks on the team have the support that they need, making sure that we're attracting the right talent, people that have the right skills, the right culture fit, and just keeping all those plates in the air.
Yeah.
And then of course still having a life and making sure my relationship, stays on track.
How do you stay on track with a connected, loving relationship as a female entrepreneur when you're putting so much energy into your business and the culture and the team and your customers? And
I made so many mistakes. I mean, let's just be real. Like I talk about this, and I've told this story. Like I worked so hard to get my business off the ground, and I was often working 7 days a week. Not just coaching. Like that was a portion of what I did, but to keep a roof over my head, it was bartending, it was waiting tables, it was like being a personal assistant, cleaning people's toilets, whatever I needed to do in order to pay my rent, put food on the table, and actually continue to grow the business. So I basically developed a habit of working nonstop. And
before Marie TV.
Oh yeah, like getting the business off the ground. I worked side
you were like
gigs.
a fitness coach. You did like dance instructions. You did everything.
I was a Nike Elite dance athlete. I taught anywhere from like 3 to 7 classes a week at Crunch Fitness. Some of them were choreographed. Some of them were basic fitness. I had the coaching clients. I was doing the content, and I was bartending and waiting tables. So I had developed this habit of nonstop work because that was what was necessary at that time.
New York.
Yes.
Yeah.
But as Josh and I, got together, and eventually when I let go of the bartending and the waiting tables and even the dance and fitness as a revenue stream, I didn't let go of the habit of working nonstop. And that created some real problems in the relationship, where it was to the point that him and I had been together for 7 years and never taken a vacation together.
Wow.
Like, we had traveled because either he had something for his work or I had something for my work, but it was always work related. So it wasn't actual just together time, just him and I. And our relationship was almost over. Like, he was kind of done with me.
Wow. Because you were just, I want to work, I got to build my business, you don't understand me, this is my dream.
I was operating too out of a lot of scarcity and a lot of just habit, like feeling like if I didn't work constantly, that it was all going to fall apart. And so there were other things mixed in there as well. There were other layers of just life pressures from all these different ends. But that was like a definite, a critical piece.
He had a son.
Oh, yeah. So
Yeah.
my stepson Zane came into my life when he was 7. So the year that Josh and I kind of, one of the times, we've had many bumps along the road. We've been together for 16 years. Any couple that's been together that long, it's not all unicorns and
perfect.
rainbows. No, absolutely not. Relationships are so difficult. But at that particular juncture, Zane was going off to college, which that was a really big thing in terms of Josh processing that, having your kid go off after you've raised them, and then me working all the time. There was this confluence of stressors that put us in couples therapy, and I had to really change a lot about how I was living, what I was believing, and really putting things back into perspective, which, saved our relationship.
What were you believing?
Well, I was believing that if I didn't work constantly, that I wasn't a worthy person, that I wasn't doing enough to make my business successful, that I was perhaps letting people down. And so I had to really shift that and understand that, I come from a background, I don't come from a wealthy background. So the work ethic in my nuclear family is very strong. Like, my dad owned a small business. My mom, although she stayed home with us, she was constantly doing stuff, constantly working, constantly fixing things, constantly doing things that took care of the family. So that's the kind of DNA I grew up with, was like, no, if something needs to get done, you get it done.
Yeah.
It's not like you sit around all day and eating bonbons and watching TV.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I got there. But then I had to readjust if I actually wanted to not only have a successful business, but have a successful life.
Yeah. Well, how old were you when you came to this realization that, like, okay, I can take a day off a week, or I can take 2 weeks and go to Italy? Or
Yes. So that was probably, I may not get the dates right because time gets warped for me. But that was, I would say, well over like a decade ago, where I started making some changes, and then really starting to see also how much more creative and productive I was when I scaled back a little bit. And that was a really powerful realization, because I think often, and I understand this, and I think it's important to contextualize this, because at different stages of our life and at different stages of our creative process, we need to work in different rhythms. Often when you're getting something off the ground, it's kind of like a rocket ship leaving the atmosphere. It takes a lot of inertia to break free from gravity, right, to get into that upper stratosphere. So there's a lot of work required in the beginning, but then you have to adjust as you move on. And I just needed to learn that lesson. But
because you were just in like launch mode all the time.
Correct.
Like, we got to launch. I mean, not launching things, but the idea and the energy behind.
Correct.
Go.
Yep. So I think
It's
about
exhausting.
a decade ago is when I really started making some good changes and putting boundaries and bumpers in place for myself. And what that means was that at the top of the year, what we do in terms of relationship, and even for the company, we do the same thing. So there's 2 points I want to make here. In terms of my personal relationship, Josh and I look at the calendar at the top of the year, and we set non-negotiable adventure time.
Wow.
So That's favorite
cool.
place to go is Italy. That's my happy place. So we don't always have to go there, but it's just been a habit for like the past 4 or 5 years. And we set 2 weeks in the calendar where it's like, he doesn't accept work. I tell the team, like, this is the time we're going to be away. No matter what's going on, we're just offline. That's it. And then there's other kind of smaller adventures that we plan, like adventures with friends, where, have a bunch of friends up for a couple of days around a birthday or around a holiday, and like put these bumpers in place so that both him and I know that there are these solid connection moments throughout the year, that no matter how busy everything else gets, that we have these things to look forward to. And that's been a game changer.
Wow.
And then in the company, I don't know if I've ever told you this story, but one day I was in New York and I was having like a really bad PMS craving for carbs. I was just like, Mama needs some carbs. And I was feeling like a croissant. And there was this great little French bakery around the corner that I had never been to. And I'm like, I'm gonna go get my croissant right now. So I roll up to this little French bakery, and on the window there was like this handmade sign that said, off for vacation back, July 18th. And it was like this 2-week thing.
Wow. You were like, what?
And I was like, wait, what?
Your business, you need to be here.
Yes. And yet it was empty. And this simple little like hand-drawn sign. And in that moment, Lewis, I had this notion. I was like, wait a minute, I'm running this digital company. I have all of these amazing, beautiful, gorgeous souls that I work with. And we're producing content once a week, every week, nonstop. When do we ever take a break? And the advantage for me, like Josh, who works in entertainment, like series, sometimes they'll have, you watch your favorite series. Like I love Handmaid's Tale. I love Stranger Things. You see 11 or 12 episodes. And
wait a year.
And yes. And then they're off for a little while, right? And I thought to myself, why do I not have downtime built into my business? And this was about the time when also there was just a cultural uprising with like, hustle 24/7 and you have to work nonstop and like never take a break, and I'll sleep when I'm dead. And I'm like, those are horrible messages for your health.
Yeah.
So we decided after I had my croissant craving, I told my director of operations, I said, starting right now, we're gonna close the company down for 2 weeks in the summer and 2 weeks in the winter, and in addition to people's already having
vacation
their vacation time. And we started that, I guess maybe, 5-6 years ago. I might be wrong on those dates, but a good number of time ago. And so our company goes dark twice a year. And now the company's at a place where not everyone in customer service takes off those exact same 2 weeks, so they stagger so that we can take care of people. But everyone has 2 weeks of dark time, 2 weeks of dark time. And what's great about that is that you don't get FOMO, thinking that you're off and there's all these other things happening and there's projects moving ahead and there's these things that you want to be in on, but you're like feeling that tension because the rest of the company is moving ahead and you're trying to relax. So it's been a game changer for us as a team.
5 years ago, roughly.
Yeah.
Interesting. Have you felt any negative effects to that?
Not one.
What if you took a month off in the winter and a month off? Is there like too much time where you're like, okay, now people are just...
It's a great question. We haven't tested that, so I don't know. 2 weeks for us has felt like a really beautiful amount of space. So over the past couple of years, the feedback, and we all talk about what we do when we come back, and we also share very openly about how it feels. And this is no bullshit too. This is one of the things I'm most proud of. When everyone comes back from break, they're so excited to get back from work. It's almost like a little joke. They're like, "Oh my God, I missed you guys so much!" And they talk about how they spent time with their families, like the adventures that they had, how they got a chance to refresh and renew themselves. And they come in with all these ideas. They didn't work on those ideas while they were away. It's just
This came to them.
It came to them because they had a chance to step away.
Yeah, they had space.
Yeah, and this is the other cool thing, Lewis, is I'm really proud of this. Oftentimes, and I don't find out about this until after a fact, they come back and I see these photos uploaded into Slack. They went to hang out with each other.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, that's
cool.
amazing.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Wow.
So those are some big changes.
Are those 4 weeks, are those paid, or is it just we're off and you guys take your time off?
No, they're paid.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, so they have, we have pretty good benefits, because I feel like in our culture, I was just talking about this last night with my creative director. We were at dinner, and it's such a strange environment that so many people that work for companies feel afraid. Like they feel
afraid of what?
Expendable. Like there's no sense of loyalty. And we were talking about someone that we know collectively who's like super talented, but in an industry where things are shifting fast. And this person, you know, there's always this undercurrent of not knowing whether or not they're going to be let go because budgets or this, that, or the other thing. And there's not necessarily a connection between employee and employer.
Yeah.
And granted, many people may, well, that's just the way that business works. That's how it must be. And I don't agree with that. Like, I want the people that work for me and with me to feel a sense of safety and security. I mean, nothing is guaranteed. I get hit by a bus, you know, we don't know. Something may happen, but that's all outside of all of our control. But on a day-to-day basis, for someone to feel like if they're contributing their top gifts and their talents and their time to an organization, that organization is also as equally invested in their health and well-being, their sanity, their ability to show up fully for their family, to have time, to have flexibility. I just think that's where we need to go if we want to create real change in our culture. I mean, there's that statistic that's been around for a while now. It hangs out that about 70% of people here in the United States are actively disengaged from their work.
Right.
You know, on
maybe
some
they're there
level.
for like 2 hours actively. You know, maybe there's 2 hours of work a day, right?
Yeah, but just even the sentiment that they have towards their work. Like, they're not satisfied with it. They're, you know, going through the motions, just showing up. They're doing it only because they get a paycheck.
Yeah.
They feel no sense of meaning or purpose. And the economic repercussions of having 70% of our workforce disengaged at work or not liking their work or not feeling satisfied with it is enormous, which speaks nothing of the emotional or the psychological or the spiritual cost of having that proportion of our workforce unhappy.
Yeah, that's true. Wow.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
What are the things you think you're not doing well in your business?
I think a lot of these have started to shift with this book project. So I tend to be a person, this comes from two places. I like to be involved in things because I'm very collaborative.
Yeah.
So I love to see how things are turning out, and I love to like put my spin on them or at least have my input. But at the same time, you know, that can be overbearing. I don't want folks to feel like they constantly have to run things past me. You know, my team definitely knows I trust them. So the thing that I haven't done well in the past is delegating enough, letting go enough control.
Yeah.
And particularly with this project, it's pushed us all so far outside of our collective comfort zones that it's been a joy to be like, you guys make the decision. Wow. You're amazing, you're intelligent, you're smart. Whatever you choose, I'm gonna be happy with.
Wow.
Yeah, that's been good.
It's hard to do to let go of that, right?
It's been great.
That's been good.
It's been really great. Like, the fact that I'm this like awake and happy and like in it right now speaks to my, you know, kind of let go and let Jesus take the wheel. And in this case, Jesus manifests as my team.
It's amazing. Just let people make decisions and move on.
Yes.
Right? You do what you need to do and let everyone else do what they need to do.
Yeah, it's the only way to sanity.
What do you think is missing in your life?
I honestly, I'm going to sound like probably such a butthole saying this. I don't feel like anything's missing. Like, I feel really, first of all, I feel really appreciative of everything. The fact that I have my health, the fact that I have a team and people that I love and people that love me. And I don't feel like there's a hole, if that makes sense.
What do you feel like you'll regret if you don't do something in the next 10 years? So you've had 10 years now of kind of launching this version 2 of your business, I would say, right?
Yes.
And now the next decade's coming up. What will you regret if it's 2030, we're doing this again, sitting here, and you're like, God, I'm really upset at myself because I didn't do this in my personal life, in my business, my health, my family, the world.
Yes. I would say the only thing I could foresee at this moment not regretting is not continuing to take that quality time with people I love. That would be the thing that if for whatever reason I started making justifications
right.
to
well,
change.
This opportunity is so amazing, so I got to go here and do this.
That would be the only thing, to be super transparent with you. Yeah, because looking back on these past 10 years, the quality time with people that I love is everything. And I know this so viscerally in my body, is that we're not going to be here forever. And we never know when the people that we love
gone.
And so for me, there is nothing more important than maintaining and enriching and deepening those personal like friend relationships, Josh, my family, like making sure that I show up as fully as possible and not letting anything take me off track from that.
Yeah.
Because it's, you know, having not had money and, you know, starting with like tons of debt and building everything from the ground up and now being in a different position, it's like I can see so clearly the success on an exterior level, like that's amazing and I'm grateful for it. But nothing can make up for not having a sense of love in your life and not having people that you care about and that you're invested in. So there's nothing that I could strive for or reach for that's going to be more important than this, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
The idea is that we need to be more and let the doing flow from there. Be yourself, be your authentic self, be here now, you know, be grateful, be present, and let the doing flow from that orientation is a completely different model that, you know, it's like I'm spending my life efforts, I think, working to share that and to help some of the best doers and thinkers in the world to reorientate what got them good, but is slowing them down from being their absolute personal best.
What's slowing them down? Fear and fatigue still?
Yeah, well, the idea, the framework, the psychological framework that I need to do more to be more. And that's born out of anxiety, right?
Not doing enough.
Yeah.
Could be doing more.
And the trick,
stressing about that.
Flat out. And the trick though there is that'll get people good. I need to do more. Damn, I missed that jumper. How am I going to miss that jumper? Let's keep it like, you know,
drive them to practice more
Yeah. So that's this, you know, it's like just enough anxiety will get you good, but it will slow you down for being your absolute best at some point.
Why do we fear so much about what could go wrong, what other people think about us, who we're going to let down, that we're not worthy enough, good enough? Why do we fear that?
It's a great question.
So much.
Yeah, it's a really great
for
question.
our whole life.
Yeah. Is that, so there's some biological things we can take a look at, and then there's also psychological, right? And then, so it's the interaction of those two. Biologically, our brain, as best as we think, and it's 3 pounds of silly putty that sits in our skull that's more complicated than, you know, like the brightest minds in neuroscience are still amazed by how our brain works. And so, but we think that our brain is designed to scan the world and find what's dangerous. Right? And so our ancestors passed that gift on to us. Your lineage passed that gift on to you, that they were able to survive. And so how survive? Way back in ancient times, that they could scan the world and easily discern how to be ready between, now let me say it more eloquently. They could scan the world and find what was dangerous or what was threatening so that they wouldn't be eaten. Eaten by the saber-toothed tiger, as the story goes, right?
Or they wouldn't eat something bad, or they wouldn't protect themselves.
That's right. So then not only was nature dangerous and all the elements in nature, but other humans became dangerous to each other. So now what we've created is the heightened ability to read microexpressions. And microexpressions are the small squinting of the eyes, the frontalis muscles between the eyes. And when those squint or don't move, it's a sense of threat. Right? Because we don't know what's happening to that from that person. And so if you got this ancient brain that's programmed beautifully to find what's dangerous, and we scanned in an undisciplined way our environment around us, we're going to find dangerous things.
Yeah.
And in modern times, we're not chased by saber-tooths anymore. The new modern saber-tooth are other people's opinions. And so we're well-conditioned from an early age, and this next generation is going to be even more well-conditioned.
Social media.
With Insta highlight reels for everything. My life is better than yours. I'm going to show you via a snap picture. Is that, so we've got this real challenge that to pursue a path of our personal best, we have to override our DNA. That's hard to do. That's really hard to do. It requires deep commitment to training.
Yeah.
And that's what psychology, the optimal opportunities that psychology offers us is just that. How to train our minds to override our DNA and to use the smaller parts of our brain to scan the world and find opportunity.
How can we train our minds every single day, throughout the day, to do that? to overcome this fear? What are the things that we could be doing?
I will rattle off as many as you want to hear, like tactics. And then I also want to put a small little asterisk next to this, is that the tactic alone is not enough, right? It's the stitching of the tactics. It's the stitching of the mental skills training to each other and to one's personal philosophy. So without a personal philosophy, it's like we end up just trying all these different things to get better, but what are we getting better at? What other people want us to be? So there's a fundamental piece of work first.
Got it.
Right?
So what would be your personal philosophy?
I'll share mine.
Cool.
I've spent a lot of time with it, and I'll tell if I could tell a story of how it worked. I think it will harden a little bit. Is that so I needed a mentor when I was growing up, and I'm thankful. What's up, Gary? Like, I'm thankful for Gary. He helped me out in so many different ways, even currently today. And so one day he says, "Hey, Mike, I want to introduce you to my mentor." Great. I didn't know there was such a thing as like a grand mentor. Like, am I ready? And so, it was this moment. I said, okay, here we go. And it was this, but to my surprise, it was this small, three bedroom, two bath home. And it was well manicured. And it was this pleasant, like 78, 82-year-old woman comes out. And I was just so pleasantly surprised, like, okay, this is going to get good. Because she just had that sense of wise woman. Mm-hmm. And it's the setting that you would imagine. The shag carpet was a little bit long. The drapes were just a little bit, outdated. Yeah. And so we sat at the table, and she's pouring me tea, and she says, welcome. And so interested to meet you. And then we sat down, and she said, so tell me what you're about. And I said, okay, well, the things that I'm most interested, let me start this way. And she looked at me and she looked at my mentor and she said, I thought you said he was ready. I said, I am. I am ready. Like, wait. No, I want to answer that. And she grabbed my tea and she said, when you're ready, sweetie, I'd like to share this tea with you.
Ooh.
Yeah. So I was like super embarrassed in that moment. Like, I thought I let my mentor down, and, it was like this really intense experience.
Wow. How old were you?
I was at that point, it was right after, it was like 26. 27, somewhere in that range. And so I didn't know what to do. And so it was this awkward moment, but I knew that I was not prepared to even answer the most basic question, who are you? And so that's where I just want to anchor that, because I think that captures what most of us feel like a lot.
Most people don't feel like they know who they are.
Yeah. And so I had this dramatic moment for me, but I think it's a really important process to go through. So let's call it a personal philosophy, but then let's extract one level out from that. The greatest and the most influential people across the globe are very clear about their philosophy. The greatest movers and shakers and change makers are spiritual leaders and political leaders, for the most part. And now we're starting to see business leaders, to do that. What was Confucius' philosophy? What was Buddha's philosophy? What was Jesus' philosophy? They're really clear. Jesus was, and I want to oversimplify a beautiful set of traditions, but Jesus was more about love and service. Buddha was more about, that all people are suffering. And then so let's work through compassion to live with loving kindness. What was Martin Luther King Jr.'s? Dr. King Jr.'s was about equality. Malcolm X, equality, totally different tone, totally different approach. Mother Teresa. Helen Keller, what was Helen Keller's? Like, okay, I'm going to go for it. And like, I deserve to be educated as well. She changed the educational system. So the most influential people were very clear. Why? Because they lined up their thoughts, their words, and actions to the thing that matters most to them. And that's what a philosophy is about. Everybody already has one. You have one, I have one. Whether we could articulate it at knife point in a dark alley, totally different element, right? And so I think that's a nice litmus test. Like, could you get it out in front of a deranged person who's got a knife to your throat? Like, are you that clear what you stand for? And do you have your personal philosophy? So that's the litmus test for folks that I work with. And I'll share mine. It's every day is an opportunity to create a living masterpiece. And so there's optimism embedded in there. There's creative juices embedded in there. And then there's, this idea of a living masterpiece. And so, when I met Coach Carroll, head coach of the Seattle Seahawks, about 7 years ago, one of our first conversations, it was over dinner, a mutual friend put us together. And we had this really wonderful conversation, and it was born out of like, what is your philosophy? So he had been on the similar journey, I should say, where he was fired from 2 head coach jobs in the NFL.
Yeah.
And on the second time he was fired. So from pain creates change. Uncomfortableness is how we grow, but change is how we, uncomfortableness is how we grow, but pain is why we change. So he experienced pain and said, if I get another chance, I'm going to do it exactly the way that is authentic to me, but I got to figure out what that is.
Well, yeah.
So he just went and scratched down on, multiple pads, spiral, old school spiral notebooks, just wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote. Took a second pass at it and said, what are the words that keep showing up? Circled those words, wrote more about those words. And that's how it eventually spilled out of him. His philosophy is always compete.
How do we learn how to learn something that we want, but it's really challenging?
Let's deconstruct this.
Yes.
Okay, so this is the key. I remember years ago, I get a call on a Friday evening, and I don't know the guy's voice. I didn't know to see the number, and I recognize it, so I pick it up, and he was like, "You got to help me. We have this mutual friend, and this my speaker tomorrow in New York City canceled because of an emergency, and I need a speaker, please." And I'm like, well, this is not usually how
the night before.
Exactly. This is usually like a 6-month in advance process. But the mutual friend was a very close friend, and I was like, look, maybe I could help you, but what's the topic? And he tells me what the topic is, and I'm like, I don't know anything about that topic. Why are you calling me? He was like, well, he wrote a book. I'm like, so? He was like, well, my friend says you're a speed reader. And I'm like, okay. He's like, well, can you come a little early and I'll give you his book, and then
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, this is gonna completely
Crazy.
This is I have to do this, but this is gonna cost you, but this is gonna make a great story. And what ended up happening was I show up at 10 o'clock, I read his book, and I give the keynote that afternoon. And humbly, it was the highest rated talk of the event.
Wow.
And I don't take credit for that because I've never, had training in public speaking, but when you understand how people learn, you could, present it. And so I read the book, I remembered everything that I needed to say, because I train a lot of TED speakers how to memorize their speech, and I know how to be able to present it in a way that's interesting and also sticks with people. But I say that because that's what I mean about, I don't have to, just like Will Smith, I don't have to get ready, I stay ready.
Yeah.
And that's the power of skill development. And if there's one skill to master, it's our ability to learn. It's called meta learning. This book fundamentally was going to be called meta learning, but people are like, oh no, they're not going to buy it if it has learning in the title, right? And but meta learning is learning how to learn, and that's a meta skill, and it helps you to learn salsa or Spanish or anything else better. And so let's deconstruct how to do that confidently. We'll start with the Limitless Model. All right, so this book used to be a book completely on skill development, which was all methodology. It was everything that I teach about how to read 3 times faster, how to learn a language, how to remember names, how to do the things how to get to inbox 0, how to do the things how to be focused, concentrate, critical think, solve problems, all the important things that really is our life, right? But then when I finished it, I talked to friends like you and everybody else, and it was like, this is a really good self-help book, but if somebody found it just on the street, they still, even they know what to do, they still wouldn't do it. Like, how come you want to learn Spanish or something else and you put it off, or it takes longer than you should? Because method is only one of the 3 parts. And so this is the Limitless Model. And I want everybody to think about a subject or some area of your life where you're feeling held back. It could be your relationship, it could be you're not making progress in your career, it could be maybe in your physical performance or wellness. Think about one area where you're stuck in a box. All right, now a box is like a cage, 3D box, and 3D is 3 dimensions. What keeps you in the box? 3 forces, and these are the 3 M's.
Okay.
And I want everyone to draw a circle, and in that circle, we're gonna draw a Venn diagram. You know what a Venn diagram is? 3 intersecting circles. And the first circle is your mindset, 3 M's. And I always alliterate everything because it helps you to be able to remember it better. First one is your mindset. Now, your mindset are your assumptions and your attitudes about something. Now, let's break that down. For me, functionally, what your mindset is about this subject, and I want people to make this very personal. Think about something, an area you're held back. This is what you believe is possible, is your mindset. It is what you believe you are capable of. It is what you believe you deserve is your part of your mindset, because that's a big thing. That's your thermostat, right? If somebody has a mindset of, like, I could teach someone the method of how to remember names, but their mindset is, I'm stupid.
I don't deserve to remember names, or I'm not capable of it.
Exactly, or I'm too old, or whatever it is. That's their mindset.
My brain doesn't work that way.
Exactly. Then the method won't take hold.
It won't matter.
Exactly. So this is the formula here.
So how do you learn to believe that you are capable?
So we'll go into this. Yeah. That's exactly what the book does. I take people through a process called unlimiting. It's a word that I coined years ago. Unlimiting is different than unlimited. Unlimiting is like the process of removing limits.
Limiting beliefs.
Exactly. Or behaviors, or habits, right? So unlimiting is an active word where you're redrawing the boundaries and borders of your life. Limitless is not about being perfect. Limitless is about advancing and progressing beyond what you believe is possible. That's what this book is about. Now, I apply that towards accelerated learning, so you can learn your languages and give speeches without notes and all that stuff. But really, it's a process of liberating yourself out of that box. So one of the dimensions that keep you in that box is your mindset.
Yep.
All right, and we can go deep into how to change negative beliefs and everything.
Okay.
And I talk about the 7 lies. Lies for me, again, is an acronym. Lie is a limited idea entertained. Because it's not true. It's not true that you don't deserve it. It's not necessarily true that you're stupid, but it's an idea we're giving energy to. We're entertaining that idea in that moment. And I show people how to unravel it in a 3-step process. But that's the mindset.
Okay.
All right. Now the second M, you can have the greatest mindset and believe everything is possible. You're capable. You deserve it. But if you don't have the second M, which is motivation, you're not getting out of that box. Right? That in your career.
I believe I can do it, but I'm going to sit here and eat chips on the couch.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
And so your motivation for me is your drive, it's your purpose, it's the vitality that you bring to something. Now, most people think motivation, they'll say motivation is a lie. And in some respects it is, because the way a lot of people perceive motivation is just rah, get excited, get hyped up, and next day, nothing changes. So the evidence of motivation is something is happening. There's an action. There's a new action taking place. And if you're not doing that action, you're not motivated. No matter what you say, if you're not doing it, it's better well done than well said. Even like a lot of people on social media, they promise things, but prove it, right? Don't say it, show it, right? You take it to action. Because knowledge is not power, it's potential power. Applying it makes it powerful. So motivation for me is a 3-step formula. And here's the formula. And I go deep in this book because there's a chapter on each part. The key to sustainable motivation, how to overcome procrastination, if you're putting things off, this is the key. It's this: P times E times S3. Now, this is a formula for sustainable, not just a surge in motivation, right? We've all watched the Limitless movie where he takes a pill and he can learn languages and read really fast and remember everything. And Dr. Mark Hyman, who wrote the foreword of the book, who's a mutual friend of both of ours, and I know he's been on your show, he says that there is no genius pill, but Jim gives you the process for a brighter brain, right?
like
it's the process, and there's no side effects, right?
Yeah, it's good.
But going back to this, when he had a surge of motivation, but then when the pill wore off, it goes back to no motivation. But this is the key. There's no pill, there's a process. And these 3 things, P times E times S3, is sustainable for the rest of your life. Because I've lived on no sleep for over a decade, right? My sleep has gotten much better since, of recent, just some breakthroughs just in medicine and everything else like that. But, I had sustainable motivation. I was still doing all the conferences, still doing my podcast every week, still speaking and traveling and doing all this stuff, because I had these 3 things. Number 1, so the P stands for purpose. Now again, if you feel not motivated in any area of your life, some people could have motivation. Now some people are very motivated to sit on the couch and binge watch Netflix. They're highly motivated to do that, right? But if you're lacking motivation to work out consistently, and now here's another lie, limited idea entertained, is that you have to enjoy the activity. Right? Like, it doesn't mean that you have to do that. Like, I was having this conversation with Tom Bilyeu, right? And he was like, I work out 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock every morning. I was like, do you enjoy it? He was like, no, I don't like working out at all. But he's motivated, doesn't miss a day. So he has the motivation. So motivation doesn't mean you enjoy it. Like every morning, I do my cold showers, like Wim Hof. right?
It's not fun all the time, but
exactly. I grew up in the Northeast. I hate the cold, right? But I do my cold showers or my ice baths. You know, I post all the time on Instagram about doing it because I know I have a purpose. Right? So I don't enjoy it, but the P in the formula is purpose. Reasons reap results. And if you get the reason, so even if I'm not, getting my sleep, I have a purpose. I have a reason to help people every single day. I want every single person that comes in contact with me, whether it's on my podcast or a video or a book, their brain is better off because of it. You know? And so that's my reason. And really, you know my story. Like my first student 3 decades ago almost, she read 30 books in 30 days. And what was her purpose? Her mother was dying of terminal cancer, 2 months to live, 60 days. And the book she was reading, health, wellness, energy, right? And she ended up saving her mom's life. And that's when I realized that if knowledge is power, learning is our superpower. And I dedicated my life to make that kind of difference. And that's what, so I have my reasons to do something. So I don't have to pump myself up. So P is purpose, tap into your reasons. And it can't be intellectual. You have to feel it, of course, right? And you could even feel the pain. Like who's counting on you to do this activity? Who's watching you? Who's role modeling you, right? Who's counting on you to show up today? It could be painful too, but if it gets you to move, that's what's important. Have that reason, the purpose. This E, now here, my mind does this thought experiment, scientific experimentations, right? If somebody just has a reason, are they always motivated? Are there any cases where they're not motivated? And I said, yes, if they're lacking the E, energy. So somebody could have a reason to work out, or they could have a reason to read, or learn Spanish, but if they're trying to do it late at night and they didn't sleep the night before, or they had a big processed meal.
It's hard to have the motivation.
Exactly, and they're a food coma, they can't be motivated because they lack energy. So in the book, I talk about 10 keys for brain energy. The 10 things that I do to light up my brain, and one of them is our brain foods. Another one is optimizing your sleep. So I do a whole area of what I've learned really moves the needle for maximizing your sleep. Because how's your thought process if you don't sleep? How's your focus?
Foggy.
How's your memory? How you're making good decisions, right? I heard that was the advice presidents give other presidents is like don't make a big decision if you didn't get a good night's sleep, right? So I talk about sleep. So in the book, in motivation, we do a whole section on finding your purpose and even life purpose and passion, and a whole area on optimizing your energy. Now you have energy to do it. I ask myself, okay, you have a purpose for something. To work out or whatever, you have, or to start this business, you have the energy. In what case, if you're like doing this critical thinking, in what case won't you be motivated? Let's say you want to start a business or whatever. You're just procrastinating on starting that business. Number one, you have the motivation, you really need it, and you know why. You have the energy because you're eating the right foods, you're maximizing your sleep, you're with not energy vampires. Yes, there is. S3. What the problem is you're making it too big in your mind. That will keep you from being motivated. Starting a business, like where do you even start? Or getting that perfect relationship or having perfect health, that's way, way too big. So what do? Small, simple steps. That's what will keep people unmotivated. They could have the reasons and purpose, they could have the energy, unlimited energy, but they don't know where to start. And because they make it too big in their mind. And a confused mind doesn't do anything. Confused mind doesn't do anything. So clarity is power.
I like that.
So small, simple step. All you have to do is ask a magic question. What is the smallest action I could take where I can't fail? It allows me, give me some progress, but I can't fail. What's the smallest step? And I cite the work in here of the habit experts that you and I have interviewed. Dr. B.J. Fogg's or the James Clear's Atomic Habits, and really my take on how to make sustainable habits, because what you do repeatedly becomes that habit. But it starts with a small, simple step. What's an example of that? I want people to read a book a week. It will change their life. I think if there's one thing that would change their life immediately, long term, it's just read every day. Reading is to your mind what exercises your body even more than audio. And my podcast, and I do everything on audio. I still encourage people to read because it activates a different part of your brain. Also, and I listen to audios when I drive, when I work out. But when the people are tested in terms of what they read, in terms of comprehension, what they listen to, reading the actual more, and they'll understand more. You know why? Is not only does it activate a different part of your brain because it's active, because listening can be passive, like watching a movie or anything can be very passive. You don't have to get involved, but reading forces you to get involved. But the second reason why is because usually when someone's listening to something, they're doing something else. And they're trying to multitask.
Yeah.
They're cleaning their house, they're working out, they're driving. So their attention's not fully on what they're listening to. So that's why the comprehension is down. But reading every single day is a great activity. But I don't tell people, read an hour a day. A small, simple step to get someone reading is read one sentence. That's a small, simple step. Open up the book. That's a small, simple step that you can't fail, right? And nobody's going to stop at one sentence. The example Dr. BJ Fogg talks about with tiny habits is, hey, we know flossing is good for your longevity.
Just do one tooth.
One tooth.
Yeah.
And who's going to stop at one tooth, right? So how do you break it down? And really motivation is energy management. It's really about energy management, meaning when you have clarity and purpose, it gives you energy, right? When you have energy, like if you activate, you eat the right foods and everything else, vitality, you have energy. And small, simple steps requires very little energy, requires very little effort, output. And there's something in memory called the Zeigarnik effect. It's by a psychologist, a woman who in Europe noticed that at the cafe she frequents, that the waitstaff would remember all the orders until they were delivered. And once they were delivered, they would forget it. And the Zeigarnik effect, which is her last name, means that the mind doesn't like open loops. So and all of the series on that you binge watch knows this, because at the end they open up a loop.
Yes.
And you're like, one more. Who does that? Like one more. And you end up watching until like 2 a.m., 3 a.m. because it doesn't like the open loops. Well, starting something like an order, remembering someone's order, and then it delivered, it closes the loop. Well, when you start something anywhere, your mind still keeps an open loop about it, so it's more likely to finish. And that's another way to overcome procrastination. Break it down into small, simple steps where you can't fail.
Yeah.
That's the 3-step formula.
How do you manage your own ego with the success you get? You've had success in multiple areas of your career, from a SEAL to an author to a business leader to an executive coach and leadership coach. How do you manage it when you are training CEOs from companies that have 100,000 plus employees and you're number one on the list and top podcasts? How do you manage it daily?
Because I've seen over and over again through my own experiences, through the books that I cover on my podcast, the books I've read in my life, if you want to open yourself up for a massive downfall, just let your ego get out of control.
Really?
If you want to let that happen, let your ego get out of control. So every single day for me, it starts at ground zero. I've got to go forward with an open mind, with a humble mind, looking at the world. It's classic. Like when I get asked a question, I don't think to myself, oh, I know the answer to this. And I get asked questions all the time.
Yeah.
And generally, when I hear a question, 99% of the questions that I hear, I've heard in some form before.
Sure.
But I don't go, oh, I've heard this before, I already know the answer. I say, okay, well, let me hear this. What detail is this person talking about? What angle is this person coming at it from? What can I learn from this question? How can I assess this question? So everything that I look at, I try and look at from a humble perspective. If you don't do that, it's going to be a problem. I mean, even when you're asking me questions about God, right? You're asking me questions about my beliefs. It's like, hey, here's my beliefs. I'm humble and I'm listening and my mind is open. And this is what I've seen and this is what I can tell you about it.
Sure.
I'm not sitting here jumping up and down saying
Stating
you should
facts,
believe this
yeah.
or you should believe that. I'm saying you should stay humble. You should keep an open mind about what's going on in the world. I am. I think you should do the same thing.
Wow. How do you? So it's a mindset. Every morning you wake up with an open mind.
Yeah, and I don't want to get in this whole morning routine where I go and look in the mirror and say, "Be humble." No, I don't do that.
Right.
I'm not. That's not me.
Right.
But when you wake up, and I'm just saying the way I go about my business and my life is to say to myself, okay, well, I could be wrong about that. I could be wrong about this.
Wow.
It's. I mean, even the book that I wrote, follow on to Extreme Ownership. The book is called The Dichotomy of Leadership. And what's interesting about this book, so the dichotomy of leadership is you can't be extreme in one direction or the other, right? You can't be, if you're in a leadership position, you can't talk all the time, right? Obviously as a boss, you need to communicate, you need to talk to your people. But if you talk too much, guess what happens? People stop listening to you. You're putting out too much information. They don't know what's important and what's not. So that's bad. You can't go too far in that direction. The other direction is you can't not talk enough, and now no one knows what's going on, no one knows what's happening. So you have to be balanced, and that's the whole idea of the dichotomy of leadership. But probably the first dichotomy in leadership that I had to say to myself, you know what, there's another side to this, is I used to tell the young SEAL officers that you have to be aggressive. You got to be default aggressive. That's how you got to be. Because when something's going on, you got to be aggressive to get that problem solved.
Right.
And if you're not being aggressive, then you're hesitating. Well, then you can get killed. Okay, so there you go. And that's what I used to tell guys. And as
that's extreme. That's an extreme.
Yes, that's the problem with it.
Yeah.
And so the question is, can you be too aggressive?
Yes.
Absolutely. You can, hey, there's a machine gun nest over there. Let's attack it. So you charge up the hill and everyone dies.
Yeah.
You've been too aggressive. So what you have to do is you have to be balanced. And that's probably, so even as I had these kind of mantras, like default aggressive, can you do too much of that? Yes, you can. So you end up with this, what do you end up with? Can you be too passive?
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, now we're not making any progress. Now we're getting crushed by the enemy because we didn't maneuver. Okay, so that's bad. So where do you want to be? You want to be balanced. Even the idea of extreme ownership. Can you take too much ownership?
Yes.
Yes, you can.
Really?
Yes, you can.
But I thought you said you need to take ownership of everything.
Two different things. Listen to this.
Okay.
If you're working for me and I say, okay, here's the mission that I want you to accomplish tonight. Here's the people I want you to take. Here's the weapons I want you to bring. Here's the vehicles I want you to bring. Here's the route I want you to use to get to the target. Here's the method I want you to use to secure the target. Here's the route I want you to do to get back.
Yeah.
So that's the plan. Now you take ownership and go execute. Now, can you really take ownership of that plan?
If someone else gave you the whole thing?
I mean, I gave you the whole thing, right? Is that your plan?
No.
No, it's
your
not
plan, yeah.
It's my plan. So when you go in the field and now you come up against an obstacle and you're executing my plan, what's your attitude?
Well, it's not my plan. It's his
and,
plan.
And you're at an obstacle now and you're like, hey, Jocko didn't think of this.
Right.
So his
New
plan's
obstacle.
horrible.
Yeah.
So now you just back away and you come back and you say, hey, we failed the mission because you didn't think of this.
You didn't think of this option. Yeah.
Right. So that's me taking too much ownership. So what I need to do is I say, hey, here's the plan, or here's the mission. How do you want to do it? And now if you're a good leader, you'll go get with your people and you'll say, oh, hey guys, here's the plan, or here's the mission that we have to accomplish. How do you guys want to do it? Now you all come up with a good plan, and you come back to me and you say, here's the plan. And I say, that looks pretty good, go execute. And now when you hit an obstacle in the field, what's your attitude?
I need to adapt. I need to adjust.
It's your plan. You'll make it
We came up with this. Yeah.
Yes. So can you take too much ownership? The answer is yes, you can. So with just about every, you can name a trait, right? You can name a trait from a leadership perspective that you think is a positive trait, and you'll immediately see that if you go too far with it, it'll become bad. It'll become bad. So you have to be balanced. So even as I came up with the dichotomy of leadership, I had to be humble enough to say to myself, you know what, being aggressive is really, really good most of the time, but if you're too aggressive, that's not good.
Yeah.
So like you said earlier, you're constantly questioning everything. And to me, what that is, that's humility. That's you being humble enough to say, you know what, I really don't understand this that well.
Yeah.
And there's some things in my life that I don't get. Whereas as opposed to you walking around saying, I already got this figured out. I already know what I'm doing. I already know where I'm going. I already know what God is specifically. I already know what's going to happen to me when I die. All those things. But instead you're questioning everything, which in my mind is a positive thing.
Yeah, that's good to know. Is there anything that is missing in your life? You feel like something's missing?
I feel like I'm living a pretty good life right now. I mean, I'm totally blessed. I mean, I got a great family. I got great kids. I got a great company. I got working with great people.
Yeah.
No,
you're
life
healthy.
is good. Healthy. You know, I get to work out, train. I'm feeling good.
Living the dream, man.
Yeah, living the dream.
So you never feel like there's something missing for you right now. If there is, you're working towards it. You're working on the next book. You're building the business.
Yeah, well, there's a difference between something missing and am I satisfied?
Yeah.
Right? Because I'm not satisfied. I mean, I always want to go. Like I never get done with the end of the day and go, cool, mission accomplished. Like it's like not even close. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're not satisfied, but you feel like nothing's missing.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say that's a fair statement.
What brings you the most joy in your life and makes you smile the most?
Oh, I mean, my kids. My kids are cool. They're funny. My wife and kids.
Yeah.
My wife and kids are cool and funny, and we have a good time and lots of inside jokes and all that.
Yeah.
And I train jiu-jitsu, and that's very fun. And surf, that's fun.
Yeah.
Play guitar, that's fun.
How old are your kids again? Age?
20, 18, 16, and 10.
And what's the biggest lesson you learned about being about yourself being a father to them?
Your kids are not going to be who you want them to be.
You can't train them to be.
They're going to be who they are. And you can give them some course corrections a little bit, but they're going to be who they are. And the more you try and force them into what you want them to be, the harder they're going to push back and rebel.
Wow.
Yep.
Did you learn that the hard way, or did you get?
Yep.
So you tried to train them into a certain way, or?
Yeah, somewhat. And it's pretty obvious. Like from my perspective, I was having a similar conversation with a bunch of executives, and we were talking. We went down the road because we're having dinner now, so we're done talking about work. But now everyone wants to ask me about parenting and everything else, and I said at the table, I'm like, hey, who here ended up doing exactly what their parents wanted them to do? And there's like one guy out of 10, right? Because most people, your parents are wanting you to do this thing and you do something else. I mean, I joined the Navy when I was 18 years old. Like that probably wasn't even on the checklist of top 20 things that my parents wanted me to do. Right. Not even in the same ballpark, right?
Yeah, they didn't want you to go to war.
Yeah, they didn't want that. So here you go. Yeah, see ya. So the more you try and kind of pigeonhole your kids into being something that you want them to be, the worse off it's going to be. It's the same thing with leadership. It's the same thing with leadership. If I'm trying to force my plan down my team's throat, the more resistance I'm going to get from it. Whereas if I plant the seed and I allow that plan to grow with them, the better it's going to be received. Like when people ask me, how do you get people to buy in? Well, you allow them to come up with a plan yourself.
What if in your mind you're like, you really know that plan's not that good?
It depends on how bad it is. How bad is it? Or what's at stake? If you're working for me and you're going to meet with a client and you have a bad pitch that you're going to give them, and the client is some tiny client that I think is a low probability of us working with, and the contract doesn't really matter, I'd be like, hey, give it a shot. Here's a couple. I might give you a couple adjustments. And give you some coaching on it, and then you go and you do your thing and you come back and you're like, oh no, we didn't land it. And I say, well, what do you think? Let's debrief. And now we talk about it. I said, you said this and you said that. Here's some other ways to go about it. I might even actually have you do it to me. So then I could sit there and take some notes and say, hey, here's some other things that might have worked. Now, if you were going to meet with a big client that really was going to add value to our company, I'm gonna either
step in,
I'm gonna step in and be like, okay, let's think about that. What's their reaction going to be? And by the way, that's when I'm not going to say, no, don't do it that way. I'm going to say, tell me that again, and let me give you some objections that you might hear from them. And all of a sudden, I'll let you come up with the solutions. Even though I'm sitting there going, yeah, what he needs to say is this. No, I'll let you come up with a solution. So then you're kind of going in there like you got this dialed. And then you're going to feel like you won, which you did.
That's great.
Which is great.
It gives you more ownership, more respect in yourself, confidence, belief. How important is feedback for leaders? Getting feedback from peers, coaches, or employees, team members.
Feedback is how you get better. Yeah. No feedback, no improvement. So if you're not humble, you're not looking for feedback and you're not listening to it. So if you think you know everything, you're not listening, you're definitely not asking for it, and even when it gets told to you, you don't listen to it.
Yeah.
So feedback is built upon being humble.
What would you say is in your way to getting to the next level? What feedback do you think you need to hear or receive from your team or people in order to reach the next goals that you have?
I mean, the weird thing about me is, even though you might look at me and think, oh, who's going to tell this guy anything, right? The reality is, if anyone of my friends, my team, anyone that works for me up and down the chain of command, if they think I'm wrong, everyone will say, hey, I don't know if that's a good plan. So even, when I was a task unit commander, so I'm in charge, and I'm the head SEAL for this 40 SEALs. I'm the main guy.
Yeah.
Anyone in that chain of command, those guys would all come to me and say, hey, I don't know if this is a good way to do it. And you know what I'd say? Why not? What do you think? What are you thinking? How do you think we should do it? My mind is open. If my plan is bad, please tell me. They would know that. So my friends, my family, They'll tell me when I'm doing something wrong all day long.
They're not intimidated or scared of you?
No,
That's good.
no.
So how does a leader cultivate that with his family, friends, team in order to welcome the feedback of the information?
Yeah, what you do is when somebody gives you feedback, you listen to it. Yeah. This is like, just the other day we have a leadership event that we do 2 or 3 times a year. But the thing that I was telling this group of people was, as a leader, you should be listening 98% of the time and talking 2% of the time. So every time you come to me and you say, hey, Jocko, I don't like this plan. I don't say shut up and do it my way. No, I say, well, how would you want to do it?
Yeah.
Tell me what you don't like about it, and then tell me how you want to do it. So therefore, the next time you have an objection, you're like, the door's open. You know that I'm going to be open-minded and listen to you, and that's how you build it. Every time you shut someone down from speaking their mind, you actually are creating a negative environment where you're not going to get the feedback. And if there's no feedback, as we just said, you're not going to improve.
What are 2 things that any leader could do to improve their leadership skills right off the bat? 2 things you can think of. And what are 2 things that wannabe leaders do that hold them back from being great leaders? So what are 2 things they could add to our
2 things
skill
that you
sets?
have. Number 1 is listen, which we just talked about. So that's fresh on my mind. Yeah. And you'd be surprised about how many leaders are thinking that because they're in a leadership position, they should be talking all the time. Wrong answer. Wrong answer. I'll sit through a meeting with a client or with one of my companies and I'll listen for 38 minutes. And at the end of those 38 minutes, I'll have already thought through every discussion that's been had. You want to argue with him and he's arguing with her. And guess what? I get to sit there and assess those arguments and see which one is the most important. Meanwhile, you're expending all your ammunition. She's expending all her ammunition. He's giving up everything he's got. I'm learning all their thought patterns. I'm learning the pros and cons of each one of their arguments. And I do that for 38 minutes. And in the 39th minute, I say, hey, here's what I think we should do. And guess what? Because I've done an accurate assessment and listened, I'm actually going to be able to make the best decision.
Yeah.
It wasn't because I was smarter. It wasn't because I had better tactical understanding. It's because I actually shut my mouth, listened to everyone spill their guts, learned everything that they knew, and did a good detached assessment of what the right thing to do was. So listen, and the other one is the word that I just used, which is detach, which is not getting emotional, not getting into the weeds about stuff that doesn't matter. If you can take a step back and look around, you're going to see infinitely more than you can when you're in the weeds, staring the firefight in the face, looking down the sights of your weapon, shooting. If you're doing that, you can't see anything else. Just think about that metaphor right there.
Yeah.
If I'm looking down the sights of my weapon and I'm shooting, my world is this big. The minute that I stop shooting, point my weapon at high port, take a step back and actually look around, I can see infinitely more. So apply that to this is the meeting that we just talked about, a 38-minute meeting. All this chaos is happening. Sure, I'm the boss. I could jump in there and start arguing and giving my opinion. But what am I really doing then? What I'm really doing then is I'm in the weeds and I'm not able to assess what is actually happening. So there you apply it there. To your personal life. If you and I are arguing, you're my friend and you did something and now we're starting to escalate an argument and I'm starting to get emotional, am I able to listen to you anymore? No. Am I able to logically figure out what's going on? If I'm talking to my wife and she did something that made me mad and now I'm starting to raise my voice, is that whole situation going in the right direction? No, it's not. It's not. So what I need to do is take a step back, detach, calm down, listen to what she's saying, and then try and assemble a logical thing to say back without saying, you need to calm down or you're too emotional. No. Because if you come to me and you're mad about something, you come to me, whether it's my wife or whether you're a business partner, you come to me and you say, the supply department didn't give me the stuff I needed. If I say, hey, calm down, right? If that's my reaction, then you realize that I'm against you, right? I don't get it. And so now it's me and the supply department against you.
No one understands.
No one understands. So I do a little technique.
What is that? Yeah.
I call it reflect and diminish. So I'm going to reflect your emotions back to you, but I'm going to diminish them a little bit so that we're not escalating the situation.
How would you do this with your wife?
So if you come to me and you go, the supply department's been late, they're 2 weeks late on this stuff. I don't say, calm down. I say, oh, you got to be kidding me. 2 weeks? And you go, yeah, can you believe it? That's horrible. We got to put a solution. We got to get that figured out. In the meantime, what do we need to do right now to get the problem solved, right? So now we're on the same team so we can work together to find a solution.
We bonded on the pain.
Yes.
You felt the pain.
Yes. We're on the same team.
Yeah.
Okay, my wife, what's gonna make my wife mad? The ice machine's not working. Right? The ice machine's not working.
It's your fault.
Yeah, whether it's my fault, but we don't know. The ice machine's not working. By the way, this is a real story. This is happening today.
Really?
The ice machine's not working. And she didn't get mad about it, but the ice machine's not working. If I go, hey,
chill out.
You have a refrigerator and a house, and you got
Live on
plenty
the
of things. You
beach.
can just calm down,
Yeah.
right? How's that going to go? It's not going to go good. Now she's going to get mad. Now it's me against her. So instead, the ice machine's not working. Man, that thing is junk. Have you called the repair guy? You know what I mean? And then all of a sudden we're on the same team, and she's like, well, no, I haven't, but I'm about to. Okay, cool. As opposed to the ice machine's not working. Well, okay, do you want me to have ice shipped in from Alaska there, princess? Right? That's not going to go over well. So
what did you call it?
Reflect and diminish.
You might be dreaming like I was dreaming. I've always dreamed. For me, ambition was never the problem. I was the most ambitious, laziest person you're ever going to meet 15 years ago.
Right.
And it was realizing, wait, just because I'm lazy by nature doesn't mean I have to be lazy in actuality. Like I can actually get the discipline to develop real drive to acquire those skills. So when I met the guys that are now my partners, they put me into a scenario where there was a very real world consequence, both positive and negative, for living up to the acquisition of skills. So, and that environment, that gladiator pit that I ended up stepping into was the business world. And the great thing is when you're no longer an employee and it's your business and everything you have is on the line, and if the business fails, you lose your house, like that's real.
Yeah.
It's real to you in a way that it's not to an employee, right? Because now there's a real consequence that goes beyond, well, I have to look for another job, right? This goes into, I could lose everything if I can't solve this problem. Now that can scare you away and keep you wanting to be an employee where it's a little bit safer, or that can be wildly motivating to you. And that was interesting to me. So I wanted to be able to say the harder I work, the better result I get. And they gave me the opportunity to plug into business where that became true. If I could solve these problems, if I could build a better product, if I could market it better, whatever, that better results came. And so there was like now a connection between how hard I work, the skills I acquire, and the reward I get. And that was all I needed. And then for me, being in that loop allowed me to do things like the gym.
Sure. So when did you discover your new values, and what are those values? Personal and then business, and then they intertwine?
Yeah. For me, they're totally connected 100%. And that's by choice, because for a long time they weren't connected. The way that I got the value system was truly looking at what works, right? And so I believe that I'm going to give away my answer to something you can ask me later, but I believe that the purpose in life, to be great, you have to acquire as many skills as you can that have utility, and then put that utility to the test. Because now you can see, did I actually get the skill that I thought I got? Did I get the result from that skill that I wanted? And you can judge both what skills you need to acquire and whether you have effectively required them. And business like that is the closest thing to, say, MMA fighting, right? MMA is, you want real-time feedback on whether you're learning and getting good at something. Let someone whose sole intent is to take your head off come in and test whether you can defend a choke or defend an armbar. It's so real and so visceral. There's, you can think of it, there's either it's pure metaphor or there's no metaphor, right? Like you were in that moment. So finding ways that business can be like that, for me, allowed me to create a set of values out of pure efficiency. So for me, the one thing I can't give you ambition. I can't make you want something, right? I can't want it for you. But once you want something, now you plug into something very real. And if you accept, I talk about, there's 25 bullet points is the Quest belief system. And that was me trying to give people the thing that they needed to escape the matrix. And in that is the belief that you can acquire skills, that the human mind, human potential is nearly limitless, right? So you start putting all this stuff together and it's like, okay, essentially everything falls on my shoulders. If I want to be great, it's all down to me and whether I execute on that or not. It's all down to my ability to say, this is the thing I want. This is the gap in skill set between who I am today and who I need to become in order to acquire that thing that I want. Like for me, I want to end metabolic disease globally, right? Yeah. So now I know what set of skills I need, right? I'm going to have to understand nutrition really well. I'm going to have to understand psychology really well in order to build this business. I'm going to have to understand just business in general to get the metrics right so that people can afford to buy these products, on and on and on. So you can identify the skill sets that you need, and then you get to test them, right? Because if I have learned the wrong skills or failed to learn a skill that I thought I had, the business doesn't grow, right? So you have this feedback loop. And really my value system was born out of that. I was so clear about what I wanted to accomplish that I could just test the skills that I was getting, and that sort of desire to accurately assess and acquire skills really is my value system.
Right. But I think you started Quest when you were 34, is that right?
When did we start Quest? Started Quest 5 years ago. I'm 39. Yes. 34. So well done. You know me better than I do.
So how long did it take you to, get clear on what you wanted? Did it take 34 years for you to get clear on what you wanted? And what was that process of actually figuring it out that you got clear? Yeah,
it's so tempting to mythologize everything and to tell you the concise story, which is maybe more useful, but is a little misleading. So the truth went something like this. We're miserable building this company that's a product we don't care about. Step one, what do we love? What do we care about? And what would we do and love doing even if we were failing? And that was the question that we asked ourselves. So, the thing that we would do for 3 very different reasons is to make this food that people choose based on taste and it happens to be good for them. And I've already explained my reasons. Yeah. And so then as we're starting to do the company, honestly, you're looking at what's working and what's not working, and you're relentlessly self-assessing. So it was just clear to me that people didn't think the way that we thought. So the 3 of my partners and I, Ron and Mike and myself, we think a very certain way, right? What we call the Quest way. And because they had developed that over the School of Hard Knocks and starting businesses and failing, they were able to bring me along much later in the process. But because I knew nothing about what they had learned up to that point and they weren't teaching me, they just drugged me into deep waters. I had to learn. And because the way my mind works, I was processing that into basically a list of, okay, here are the lessons I've learned. I was codifying it, right? Turning it into a map for success that I could hand to other people. And that ultimately became the 25 bullet points that are the Quest belief system. So as we're going, and I realize in my head I've got these, what I didn't know at the time was 25 bullet points, but anyway, I've got this way of thinking, and I'm encountering these employees that don't think like that. And so accepting that that was really when I started to realize there's a gap between who people are and what they tell you they want to accomplish. Because in the beginning, I hired everyone. Right. Not because I'm super smart and thought, hey, I should. There was no one else, right? Like we had the smallest handful of people ever. And so I started doing the interviewing. As I was doing it, I start realizing, God, these guys tell me they want to do something amazing with their life. And if you just listen, like, wow, yeah, like I want to be on your team, dude. You're going to do amazing stuff. And then you realize they can't execute on that dream. So
why can't they?
They don't have the mindset yet. Like you could do an entire podcast series on how to get the mindset, but I'll just use Carol Dweck and her amazing book, Mindset.
I have it up there too on the shelf somewhere.
I'm sure. Such a good book. I see Simon Sinek up there, who is also very influential in us. And she says some people either believe they're as smart as they're ever going to be, and that's that. So they're going to be ego protective, and they're going to try to thwart anything that makes them feel like they're not the smartest person or whatever. And then there's people with a growth mindset, and they realize I'm not the smartest person, and I'm certainly not as smart as I could be. So even if I am the smartest person that ever lived, I could get a little bit smarter. And so when they're confronted with contradictory information, they learn and they soak it up like a sponge.
Whereas other people are fixed mindset, right?
Correct.
They're fixed on like, no, this is the way and I'm right and that's wrong.
Yes. And I would say the world, everyone's on a spectrum, right? Even I, as much as I believe in it and work my ass off to be a growth mindset, I still have, let's call it 10%, where I catch myself and I'm like, come on, dude, you know better than that.
Yeah.
But so people that fall in the, let's say, sub 50% spectrum of the growth mindset, it's got to be 98%.
So what's the question you ask people now when you hire them to know if they have a growth mindset or a fixed mindset?
You ready?
Ready.
It's a weird thing. People actually, I don't let them do it anymore, but people actually used to ask if they could come in and sit in on the interviews because they were so weird. Not intentionally so. It was just to really get to a human being and who they are, it requires some weird stuff. So it goes like this. You walk in the door, there's a couple bad things happening. One, your anxiety levels are through the roof because you're in this weird setting. You're on my turf. You're sitting across from me. They've built me up. Oh, it's the president of the company. So people come in, and if you like
$1 billion brand,
put their fingers, put your fingers on their aorta, their arteries, and you're going to, the heart's going to be just racing out of control. So that's problem number one. The blood is literally leaving the prefrontal cortex, and they're just in a bad state.
They probably want to say anything to get the job.
And that takes us to the tyranny of being chosen. Well said, my friend. So people come in, they want to be picked, right?
Yes.
Being picked is awesome.
Accepted, acknowledged, chosen, yes.
Hell yeah. We all want that.
Yeah.
I teach people about the tyranny of being chosen, and I still have to check myself. Because it's just rad to be picked. Like, there's no two ways about it. So they walk in, they're nervous as hell. They've got the tyranny of being chosen. They want to win the job. They're not trying to assess the opportunity. They're not asking, is this job right for me? They're merely trying to be selected. So step one is, hey, welcome. I understand this is a very weird situation. So I want to bring your anxiety levels down as much as possible. You should be interviewing me. You should be kicking my tires and figuring out if I'm right for you. You're offering to give me 50% of your waking hours. You better love this job. Like, for some reason, this job better be moving you towards what you want for selfish reasons. So literally I open the interview by saying that and then saying, I'm here to answer one question and one question only. When you're at your most selfish, are you good for me? And when I'm at my most selfish, am I good for you? And when you see an alignment of selfish desires, it really is beautiful. And I'll give you an example. My chief marketing officer, Nick Robinson, really, really sharp kid. He wants to build a media empire. He's not so worried about obesity. He struggled himself a little bit, so I think it resonated with him, but that wasn't a stated thing for him. He's got much bigger goals that he needs to build a media empire to do it. Now, I need a media empire in order to get this brand to mean something to people so it can bring the kind of value to their lives that I want it to bring. So here, I need somebody that has, when they're at their most selfish, they are learning about building a media empire. And he's thinking, I need somebody to fund this whole thing while I learn how to build a media empire and try that.
Because I can't pay it all myself. And
Exactly. So that's the alignment of selfish desires. So I'm trying to put people in that position where they're just trying to figure out if this is right for them, which hopefully lowers their anxiety levels, and they're no longer worried about being picked. And then the sort of Trojan horse is I'm trying to get them outside of the interview answers because I'm not going to see the real them. I'm going to see the representative that they send. And when you were on Inside Quest, there was a moment on the show, and that's why I stopped. And I was like, the way this dude is looking at me, like, I wish everybody could see, because you weren't there to give me pat answers. You were actually engaged.
I mean, I was almost crying at a couple points.
It
I was like, I wanted to be as real as possible and be engaged as possible. And I think you got to allow yourself to go anywhere and everywhere to get that truth.
For sure.
Yeah.
And and it was like a beautiful moment, right? It was so cool to share that and to have been able to create an environment like that where you could be so raw, so real. We had an audience. I mean, it was just so it created this whole vibe in the room. It's like one of those late night where it's dark and everybody can like let their guard down. If you can get that to happen in an interview, as uneasy as that is, then you get to the real person. So the technique I use for that is a confession. So I tell them, look, I'm going to try and get you to lower your guard and reveal yourself as quickly to me as possible so that I can judge you. And I'm going to reciprocate, and I'm going to lower my guard and reveal myself as quickly to you as possible so that you can figure out whether
this is what you want.
Yeah, exactly. If it's what you want.
Right.
So, and the confession is really simple. And what I'm about to say is actually true. I want to be a Jedi. First of all, I think in movies almost at all times. So The Matrix is the perfect example of my life.
And comics.
Yes, 100%. So I have no interest in wielding a lightsaber. That's not interesting to me. But the ability to influence, these are not the droids you're looking for, that is so meaningful to me. One, because it allows you to control your own mind, right? There's no more powerful mind control than control over one's own mind. And then because I believe that I use it not only for the good of that person, right? You should be a Quest for the exact number of days that it's the most selfish thing you can do. So I'm already thinking of you. And then we've got...
so you don't want them to stay forever if it's not selfish
way.
for them anymore.
No way.
You want them to get out as quickly as possible.
100%.
Interesting.
Dude, nothing terrifies me because I lost 8.5 years of my life,
Being
right?
complacent, being safe, because it was comfortable, good money, good,
Exactly.
all those things, yeah.
And it really felt like I lost them. And I was like, time is the most precious commodity you have. And I mean, look, I reframed it because it doesn't do me any good to sit there and say I lost 8.5 years of my life. I learned a lot, but it was like, it was unnecessary the way that I went about. Like I learned every lesson the hardest way possible with the most pain and suffering possible. So I'm emotionally just keenly aware of what it means to service someone else's dream rather than your own. And I think, so Elon Musk inspires the life out of me. Like that guy just dreaming the way that he dreams is so incredible to me. I want to find the next Elon Musk, light them on fire and get them to believe that they can do that and they can execute on that level. And so the sort of background thing that's
even
running...
if they leave you.
100%.
So help you get to the next level while cultivating that within them. And then when they're ready to leave and it no longer serves them or you, then you want them to go out and be happy.
For sure.
Yeah.
And I've taught 2 people to be direct competitors, and they've gone on to launch nutrition companies.
Their own bars or...
Yep, 100%. And to me, that's if you take it out to the natural conclusion. So we make a promise to our employees, and I'm going to try to set you free. That I think of it in matrix terms, right? So I'm going to try and free you from the matrix. As someone helped free me from the matrix, I feel obligated to pay that back. And getting free of the matrix is shorthand for learning to think like an entrepreneur, right? You hit an obstacle, you don't stop, you find a way around it, you have a growth mindset instead of a fixed mindset. I want to do that for people, and I want Quest to be that environment. Whether you meet me, spend time with me should be irrelevant. Just the Quest environment is going to provide that to you. So to that end, we tell people, I will teach you anything you want to know. I will give you the list of books in order that I think you should read to be able to take my job from me. I will at every corner encourage, or every turn encourage, if you have an entrepreneurial spark and you want to chase it, I will encourage that. I will never ask you to hide your passions from me. The only catch is your tuition. You have to be killer at your job.
Yeah.
Right? If you're killing it at your job, then
whatever you want.
Right, then your reward is Quest University. And our goal is to teach you all those things. And some of it's formalized, teaching people basic finance and things like that. Yeah. The whole show Inside Quest was meant to be us paying that forward and teaching people that mindset, bringing on people like yourself to come on and just show people how far you can take that mindset, how you can go from injury to just massive accomplishment in a ridiculously short period of time. People are super inspired by that. So that kind of thing is our promise. But if you follow that out to its natural conclusion, ultimately someone comes and says, yeah, you'll teach me anything. You'll encourage me entrepreneurial. Teach me how to build a nutrition company, and we'll do it. Wow. And the reason we do it isn't because I'm eager to build, my next competitor. It's really because it's a value system that I believe in, right? And so I don't want to artificially limit it. Also, to be honest, I believe that the juice is always in the execution. And if they can out execute me, that's bad on me, right?
Or it's something you can learn about what they have.
For sure.
Interesting. Now, I saw, this is all great stuff, and I saw somewhere online that when you launched Quest, there were 1,600 other protein bar companies that launched in 2010.
Flavors or companies, yeah.
Flavors or companies.
Yep.
What gave you the audacious mindset to think that you could compete against all those, plus the 10, 20 years of other nutrition companies out there and beat them?
Yeah, it's...
Without having any experience in this.
Yeah, I'm going to give you a phrase that I play in my own head that I know when I say out loud, 50% of people love it and 50% of people hate me for it, but it's true. So, hey, here we go. I have the arrogance of belief. Mm-hmm. I believe in myself. Now, I believe in one thing about me. I am not the smartest guy. I got a 990 on my SATs. I took it twice. That's my combined score.
Better than me.
That's bad for both of us. I always joke with people, a monkey smearing feces on the test could score higher than I did. Like, it's literally terrible.
Yeah.
But I always believed that I could do whatever I set my mind to, right? So that's the only credit I will give myself is when other people break and give up and stop, I just don't, right? And it comes down to the story you tell yourself about yourself. And that's the story I tell myself. I was just this last weekend, I was at an entrepreneurial organization, and they brought a world-class mountain biker in and said, hey, anybody that wants to go for a ride with her, go. And I thought, okay, you know, I'll go, and because she's saying we can do a beginner course or whatever. And I thought, oh, that's perfect. You know, I'll jump on the bike and go. I've never been on a mountain bike before, ever in my life. I haven't been on a bike of any kind probably in 15 years. So that was probably stupid. And we're in, Sun Valley, Idaho. So it's not exactly flat land. And we go mountain biking, and I'm dying. I'm just done. It's at like 6,000 feet, first of all. So I cannot catch my breath. And I keep stopping, and everyone's like, oh, you know, it's okay, man. Like, go ahead and turn back. It's all good. It's all good. And I'm like, I don't think you know the story I tell myself. Like, there's no universe in which I stop. So I keep going. Finally, they've done the loop, right? Some people have turned back, whatever. Yeah. They've done the loop, and now they're coming back, and they're passing me. I'm still headed out. And they're like, you need to turn around. And I'm like, I'm so sorry, but I'm not going to turn around. And they said, okay, but then we're no longer responsible for you. And I was like, oh, okay. I'm like, it is what it is, man. I appreciate that. No worries. I'm a big boy. Like, go. And I just kept going. And I must have come in an hour and 20 minutes or something after everybody else. But I finished. And that meant so much to me. I was like, I'm going to ignore the fact I got my ass handed to me and I came in dead last. But I'm going to be proud that I didn't quit.
Interesting. Did you say arrogance of belief? Is that what you said?
The arrogance of belief.
You know, it's interesting. When I study champion athletes, there's one thing that they have over everyone else, one of two things, and it's a belief in themselves or their beliefs in something higher, giving them that strength, courage, athleticism. And whenever I listen to champions on interviews after the Super Bowl, whatever it may be, the first thing they say is, you know, how do you feel? That the broadcasters then they say, you know, I want to say, you know, thanks to God who gives me all the glory, who gives me all my strength, my courage, everything. I believe 100% in him and his power and in that power. Or the other athlete is like, I believe in myself so much. I'm the best. I'm the greatest. I believe I will do whatever it takes. I believe that I can go through any adversity. It's that belief, that arrogance of belief, either way, that I believe makes people great or not great. Yeah. And even if you're, you know, the other person may have a lot of belief as well, and sometimes it just doesn't fall your way. You know, Tom Brady has lost a number of Super Bowls, has also won a number of them. But it's getting to that opportunity, I think. You got to have that belief either way. So that's a good point right there. What makes you guys different than everyone else?
There's really two things. One, the product is just different. So we were the first ones. In fact, I never really answered your question. So there's 1,600 bars products into a declining market. Everyone told us we were crazy, but there was nothing in the market that we would eat. So we knew there was at least a market of 3.
Too much stuff in it, too much chemicals,
and we just thought, look, man, if we can deliver this product that's real, people will respond, and you know, and wanting to build a company of value so that people could love it in two ways. So one was just we created a better product, and then two, we said right from the beginning, there's two things that we export: our product and our philosophy. And that made us weird right out of the gate. And we said, look,
but different is good.
Yeah, right. And this was really different in a positive way, because we wanted to own up this. There's two things going on with the company. There's the ability to make this superior product and get it out into the market and all that. And then there's the mentality that we have that has allowed us to do this. And we want to share that mentality with other people. And we have a similar global desire by exporting that mentality, which is, we shorthand it to Elon Musk, but I mean, the next Bill Gates, people doing big things, world-changing things, right? We want to find those people. We want to give them the arrogance of belief in themselves, or a less controversial way of saying, we want to give people the confidence of belief.
Exactly.
So that they can be confident, that they can believe in themselves enough to take a risk, and quite frankly survive failing. And a lot of people, I think, get eaten up by failure, which is not useful. So helping people develop a mentality that inoculates them from the pain of failing, from the pain of not being chosen, you know, all those things that really knock people back. We want to export that philosophy. And that certainly plays well for the brand, because the brand was always meant to be empowering, right? We had to make a decision early on. Is a Quest bar what you give to somebody who has 6-pack abs and you say, well done, son, you get to eat one of these? So is it a trophy, or is it a catalyst for change? Hey, I see somebody, this guy, this gal, they're struggling, and I want to give them an inclusive community. I want to give them a product that feels good, that they can celebrate with, that they can reconnect to joy. And that's what we want to be. We don't want to be a trophy. I want to be a catalyst for change. So when you're already just in the mindset, we want to be a catalyst for change, and you're trying to put that out into the world in ways that, by the way, do not serve you from a financial standpoint in any way, shape, or form, it actually allows you to create an authentic connection with the consumer, and being real and really connecting with them, that does serve you from integrity of the brand.
Sure, yeah. You said 8.5 years of your life you feel like was taken from you.
I sold it cheaply.
You sold it cheaply.
I won't allow myself to say it was taken from me.
You sold it cheaply.
I sold it cheaply.
I'm curious, what were the biggest lessons you learned about yourself in those 8.5 years that you apply now to your business? And also, do you feel like you would have such a big company and mission and purpose with Quest without those 8.5 years?
I definitely wouldn't. And is it the classic case of I wouldn't change anything because it brought me to where I am? Sure. That's not an interesting mindset to me, right? Because I don't want to sit here and fumble for the next 8.5 years. I want to be deadly efficient.
Yeah.
So that is it's a better framing device for me to say that was time sold cheaply, to remind me not to make the same mistakes
again.
But I have reframed it in my mind as well, and I understand I learned very powerful lessons. So what lessons did I learn? I learned that you really have to set your mind to acquiring a certain set of skills with all the efficiency in the world, that you can acquire those skills, first of all, that anything is possible as long as you set your mind to it. And that and this is probably the most important lesson that I learned, that what is working against you is your own mind. Now, if you stop there, you're in trouble because it's not specific. So we all have insecurities that get triggered, and then we start acting foolishly as a result of that trigger. Now, so we all have a superpower. I'm sure you've heard that before. Yeah. We all have a superpower. Mine is the ability to understand my own emotions and drivers, even when they're petty and ugly. And I just admit to them. And I'm talking within seconds. Like if I have just a horrible, petty thought, feeling, driver, I'm like, okay, I'm doing this for a really stupid reason. And because I'm aware of it, I can't always stop it. So this is not like, yay me. I can't always stop it. But because I at least recognize it, I can then train it out of myself over time. Because it's like, okay, when you do that, it's because this person triggered that insecurity and you're dealing with it this way. And that also lets me then teach other people. So if you walked into a meeting at Quest, it would be really weird because we're talking vulnerable. Like we're being totally vulnerable with each other. We're being really honest about what insecurities are being triggered. And if somebody makes a weird face when somebody else says something, I'll just be like, you made a weird face. Let's talk about the weird face. Because I know that weird face is because some insecurity is being triggered, right? And what happens when people's insecurity is triggered, they'll fight for a dumb idea just because it's theirs, right? And they don't want to feel stupid. So they want to win the argument. And the thing that I think I learned over the 8.5 years that a lot of people don't really understand, and if I could give this gift to people, it'd be very powerful for them, that everyone is going to build a massive ego. Everyone in this room right now, the three of us, we all have big egos. I promise you. Yeah. It's only a question of what did you build your ego around? Did you build it around something that's positive and empowering? Or did you build it around being perfect, something that's very fragile, something that you could never uphold, so you're going to end up fighting to protect your ego, to what may be essentially a really bad idea, but because it was your idea and it made you feel good, you're going to fight for it. Yeah. So I realized very early on, because I'm not as bright as my partners, and intelligence is not a predictor of success, so whatever, that's not a big thing for me, but I'm really not, just like on a raw IQ level, I'm not as bright as my partners. So they can process data much more quickly than I can. And in the beginning, it made me feel very inferior. And so that triggered an insecurity. And so I would fight for dumb ideas because they were mine. And sometimes I could actually convince them. And it was one day realizing I actually won that argument. And now I'm terrified because I've convinced them.
Not the right thing, or
not only what if, I know it's not. I know it's a worse idea, but I've just out-argued them, right? Like I've fatigued them. They no longer want to fight over it. So, and I thought, wow, that's really dumb, because if I'm goal-oriented, if my goal really is XYZ, right? I want to end metabolic disease. Then you're either moving towards that goal or you're not. And so having that realization made me go, I need to build my self-esteem around something that is at all times empowering. So rather than building my self-esteem around being right, which is what I've been doing up to that moment, and being right still feels good, right? Everybody loves it.
Feels great.
But there's a more powerful one, which is to identify the right answer faster than anyone else, which means you may have the right answer. And then I'm gonna be like, Lewis has the right answer. That idea is so badass. And then I'm gonna get so hardcore behind your idea and be the driving energy behind it that people will actually
everyone else.
Yeah. And the whole time I'm gonna be screaming, this is Lewis's idea. Lewis is a genius. This man did it. But everyone is getting behind me because I'm running harder and faster than anyone else. And because I'm bringing so much energy to the right answer, it makes me feel good. Like I feel rad. I feel as rad as I would have if it actually had been my own idea.
Let's talk about self-awareness, because it sounds like you have a lot of self-awareness. How important is it for everyone to have self-awareness, and how do you cultivate that, understanding that skill set?
It absolutely is critical. I think it's probably the most important skill that you can develop. And here's how I train people to do it at Quest. So I'll give you one specific application. There's many, obviously, so this will be very, very specific. In interviewing, the first thing you need to do, you need to keep a 7-second journal. In the first 7 seconds of meeting somebody, you have a feeling, and that feeling usually emanates from your gut, right? You're either drawn to that person, you want to hang out, they make you feel uneasy, whatever. You probably don't understand why you like them, you may not understand why you don't like them, but you have a reaction, and it comes way too quickly for them to talk you out of it. So just take note. Then what I do is once I recognize, oh, I have a positive, or ooh, I have a negative feeling for this person, I then open my mind up. If I love them, I open my mind up to they may be terrible here. Or if I really don't like them, I open my mind up to they may be the best thing ever. And so I go through the rest of the interview simply remembering what the first 7 seconds told me. Then I get to spend, let's say, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, sometimes up to an hour with that person, just trying to find out who they are, revealing myself, getting them to reveal themselves. And through that, I will form a new opinion. And it may be the same as my first 7 seconds. It may be wildly different. And then if I hire them, I get to test, was I right? And which one was right? If I initially reacted poorly, but then ended up hiring them, was I right the first time or the second time? So you just over the repetition of going through I have an emotion that I don't understand, but I'm going to make mental note of it. And I actually tell people to write it down. Going through that process and then later identifying it, that becomes really, really useful because you can start to test the hypothesis. I feel this way and I think it's because of this. And then you see over time if it was or not.
And how many people do you stick around more than 6 months once you hire them?
Do I hang around?
How many people
or
stick
stay
around
at the company?
Stay at the company for more than 6 months? Or is it like a quick decision if you know in the first 30 days? Is it like a marker where they either make it or they don't, and you're like, okay, it's probably not the best fit? How do you judge that?
You know, that's actually something that I struggle with because I would say we have a relatively high turnover rate. And the reason is we're a really, really particular flavor. And for people that have a growth mindset, you will not find a better place to work. But if you have a fixed mindset, we sound like lunatics, right? Like imagine you walk in with a fixed mindset. You actually believe you're as smart as you're ever going to be. And that's that. Some people are born with more than others. And that's just the way it is. You think of yourself as a very bright, very intelligent person. Thank God, right? And to you, it's like height. You either have it or you don't.
Yeah.
And you walk into a meeting and somebody makes a funny face and I can tell they're shaking their head because there's some historical disagreement between these two. And I say, literally just today, by the way, this is a real example. I'm like, you're shaking your head because you believe you've told somebody something and they haven't listened, right? To somebody with a fixed mindset, that's like, this isn't a therapy session, dude. Like, what are you doing? But to me, knowing how people entrench themselves into bad behaviors that they can free themselves from, and that's all judged by efficiency, by the way. So it's not like frou-frou, Tom thinks this. It's we have a goal, and I judge every behavior, every smile, frown, whatever, against does it move us towards where we're going or away from where we're going. So, yeah, for the people that stay, they stay for a very long time. For the people that leave, they leave fast.
I believe that we can't achieve our goals without a great team. And it sounds like you're building a great team, but with everyone turning over quickly, how does that dynamic fit in with creating connection with people? If, you know, their office mate right next to them is gone within a month and they're being vulnerable and opening up and sharing and connecting and being honest and sticking to these 25 bullet points, these values, how does someone fully open up and express themselves and trust that they can if they're going to leave and go do something else and be gone?
Yeah, so the way that we have it, I would say probably about it's going to be north of 90% of the people that once they're in, they're in. So there's this ever building snowball of people that have been working together now for years.
Yeah.
So there's like a cultural lexicon. So the way that we refer to it is the island has voted you off. So it really becomes that collective of people who make up the core of the company are like, this guy he's not having fun. We call him clock punchers. He's a clock puncher. He's a 9-to-5er, right? He hasn't bought
invested into the brand.
Yeah, but not even that, because we don't think like that. Like, I don't want people, the dream to end metabolic disease is my dream. If you happen to share that dream, wow, that's fantastic. But if we're not serving something that's intimately personal for you, you shouldn't be here, right? And when someone is serving themselves, everything about them is different. They've got more ideas, more energy. They put more time into it with a bigger smile. They're just more energetic. So when people walk into Quest, the first thing they say, almost without exception, is, whoa, there's a real energy here. Because that's people, that's, 1,300 people that are there for their own selfish reasons, right? So while I say we have a high turnover, it's high by my standards, because I want everybody to have a growth mindset and to really fall in love. But I mean, how we compare to other companies, I don't know.
Sure. What do you think is the number one skill or asset that everyone should have that will always further them in life? If you could say there's one asset and skill that you need to have in your life, for business, relationships, whatever it may be.
Being a good writer, good communicator in the written word. Yep. And I don't think it's hard to improve that. I think that a regular practice of writing, it could be journaling in the morning for 5 to 10 minutes with something like morning pages. People can Google that. You can actually Google what my journal looks like. So what my journal looks like, literally, and then my name and some examples will pop up. But having a regular writing practice, and it could be just an assignment that you give yourself once a week, and you're going to write 3 to 5 pages, and then you're going to pay someone to edit it or to review it. And that could be a teacher at a local college who does, say, creative writing classes, or it could be a friend who's a lawyer or a lawyer. Lawyers are very good at, not all of them, but they're very good at spotting sloppy language or sloppy thinking, words that are unnecessary, words that are easily confused. And just that practice of tightening up your writing will tighten up your thinking. And so if you want to improve your thinking, the most concrete, tangible way to do that is easy to manage is having a regular writing practice of some type. And the goal isn't to become a better writer. The goal is to become a clearer thinker. And no matter what you are doing in life, you are going to have to, especially in a digital world where email is going to remain king for the foreseeable future. And if not email, it's going to be text. There will be a text component because people can answer it asynchronously. Then you need to be a compelling communicator. And there's a book called On Writing Well that I think is a very good investment for people. There is a book called Bird by Bird, which is hilarious and very, very good for dealing with some of the neuroses that writers have, particularly if you're interested in fiction, which is an area I want to get into. But and then I would suggest, very closely related to that, is getting good at negotiating. So communicating, negotiating, they're two.
So written and then verbal communication.
Written and verbal. There's a program called Secrets of Power Negotiating by, I think it's Roger Dawson. And the audio version is exceptional to listen to because you are able to pick up the nuance of the intonation and the delivery. And then you role play that. And I mean, really, I'm blanking on my quotes here. Archilochus, I think must have been a Greek of some type, general perhaps. Let's just say it's a general. But his quote, and I'm paraphrasing this, was something along the lines of, we do not rise to the level of our expectations, we fall to the level of our training. And you have to practice. Of course. You can't expect to read a book on negotiating, walk into a huge negotiation that you're nervous about, and knock it out of the park. No. You have to role play it. You have to practice. So I think with the one asset would be honing your clarity of thought by some type of regular writing practice.
Sure. I like that. As two guys sitting here, former bullied elementary school kids here, what do you think are some good ways to increase confidence for anyone, or what are some ways that you did to increase confidence along the way, and what are some things other people can do?
Increased confidence for people in general or for kids? Or
Yeah, in general. Let's say adults, people listening. 18 and up.
I really think that positive thinking is overrated. So what I mean by that is, or let me phrase that a different way. I think positive thinking is necessary but not sufficient. So what I've noticed, and this is very common, for instance, in the meditation world, you'll see people. I've met some tremendous meditation teachers, and some of them defy this description, but they're outside of the action, right? So they're at a monastery, they're somewhere very with minimal inputs, and they're the picture of patience and calm and so on. But I've seen some of those people
all day long.
Exactly when you throw them into the front, onto the front lines, and people are telling them to fuck off, and they're honking behind them, they lose their shit. Yeah. And I think that you need to make yourself uncomfortable. So if you have and that's why in the 4-hour work week, these comfort challenges are so important. I mean, and they seem silly, but there's a very transcendent or important benefit that you get from, say, going into a Starbucks and laying down on the floor for 20 seconds and not saying anything to someone and then just getting back up. And that's a comfort challenge. Most people do not want to do it. And they'll do that and they'll get up and they'll be like, wow, I was so nervous about that and nothing bad happened.
Nothing happened.
Exactly. And when you expand your sphere of comfortable action by doing things that make you marginally uncomfortable, you get better at asking yourself and answering the question, what's the worst that could happen?
Yeah.
And you realize, not much. Like, really, I've done all these other things I thought were going to be these horrible experiences, and I was totally fine.
Sure.
Great. So let me try A, B, or C that I am worried about.
Right.
Or was previously worried about. So I think that you have to inoculate yourself against fear by exposing yourself to fear. It's the only way. It's the only way you can do it.
Yeah, when I was, I think it was 15 or 16 in the summer, going to like junior year of high school, I was starting to like get into my body, and I was terrified of women still. Like I could talk to them, but I couldn't go up to strangers, right?
I'm still terrified of women.
Right? And I remember being like, I'm sick and tired of not being able to talk to girls because this is pissing me off. When all these other guys are like able to talk and just go up and have fun, I couldn't do it. So I gave myself this challenge, and I wish I would have read the book. The book would have come out, 15 years ago, I could have done it. But I gave myself the challenge of every time I see a girl that makes my heart flutter, or that I'm like nervous by, I have to go up to her and ask her for a number and start a conversation with the intent of asking her for a number.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, man, at the end of the summer, I was really good. It was so terrifying the first week.
Yeah.
Because I was like, what's going to happen? They're going to reject me. They're going to laugh at me. They're going to talk about me. But it wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
Even when I did fail, I was like, oh, well, on to the next girl.
Right. Exactly.
Right? And I really believe in that.
It's a practice. You can't, I don't think you can, your subconscious is really on point and honest in a lot of ways, and you can't fool yourself into being confident just by repeatedly telling yourself to be confident.
Be positive. You got this.
You have to incrementally do things that make you routinely uncomfortable.
Yeah,
and
like that.
So it's like one that actually in the TV show, in the Tim Ferriss Experiment. So one of the episodes is on building a business, and and so Noah Kagan and I of AppSumo.
Love Noah.
Yeah, tutored this woman. I'm not going to spoil the all of the details, but who's building a business. And one of the things he had her do, like right on the spot, she had no prompting for it. He's like, all right, go inside and get a coffee and ask for 20% off.
Wow.
And see if you can get 20% off of your coffee. So
download the episode to see what happened.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, there's a lot more. Yeah, you want to talk about comfort challenges? There's a lot in that episode. But the just the act of doing these little things that make you uncomfortable, hugely valuable.
I like that. Very cool. All right, I want to get to a few last questions. One that you ask, I think sometimes I've heard you ask this at the end of your episodes, is I think you say the question like, I'm going to ask you something and then you just give me the first response. And one of them is punching someone in the face. I think that's a question you ask, right?
Yeah. Whose face comes to mind when you think of the word punchable? Yeah.
So who is that for you right now?
Oh man, and I realize why this is a tough one to answer because people don't. There's another expression: friends come and go, but enemies accumulate. And let me think about that. I'll give you a real answer. So I'll give a general answer, and but it's true. And this is I feel like I've aged 10 years just fighting this battle internally. Pretty much every kind of mid-level big company bureaucrat who's tried to veto creative decisions of mine makes me so furious. It's hard to even verbalize how angry that makes me.
Wow.
Because they've never had their own skin in the game. They've never had to stand on stage and risk getting booed. They've never had to put out something and risk not even getting booed, but just getting crickets. They've never had to like stare down the barrel of the gun and potentially bite that bullet. They've never had to do it.
Yeah.
And so for them to veto or interfere with any creative decision on my part just makes me fume. And I'm not saying it's helpful for me to fume, but that's my response. So it definitely makes me want to punch.
Wow. Okay.
And kick and elbow and knee and stomp and the whole 9 yards. So far, haven't acted it out.
Another question. If you were given, let's say, $50 billion right now handed to you, and someone said the only thing you can do is use this to help the world, what would you do to help the world with that money? You couldn't use it for yourself, but you had to use it for...
50 billion. First thing that comes to mind is focusing on the Global Literacy X Prize or something very closely aligned with that. So determining how to create a software program that is open source, that can be put onto smartphones, any type of, say, Android device and beyond, that allows children in any country in the world to develop basic literacy and numeracy skills without a teacher. So software that they can pick up, figure out, that will take them through the teaching of these things in some type of compelling way that competes well against all the other things they can access. I think that would be the first place I would focus. But quite frankly, I would get a bunch of people in the room who are smarter than I am, who have had to make decisions like this. Maybe not with 50 billion, but with billions, certainly. Sure. And I would sit down and be like, okay, what are the biggest mistakes that people make when they're put into this situation? And but I think the building, I would basically take my goals that I have already with the books and 4-Hour Chef and with the Tim Ferriss Experiment, the TV show. All of these are aimed at providing people with a superior toolkit that makes them world-class innovators and problem solvers. And if you can take hundreds of thousands, millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of people who currently do not have the capability to be far-reaching problem solvers because they don't have basic literacy and numeracy, and you provide that to them, it also helps prevent, I think, a very large percentage of them from becoming problems. Right. And they become contributors instead of just pure consumers. So that would be where I would focus. At least offhand, that's the first thing that comes to mind.
Okay. I consider you probably one of the most elite problem solvers out there. And
thank you.
Yeah. And besides the not having the solution of living forever, what's the one problem you have yet to solve that eats at you the most?
How to do side splits like Van Damme between two chairs.
That is pretty sweet. Although I don't think I could do that anymore.
It's been on my to-do list for 30 years, but I think I may just have to give up on that. There isn't really any pragmatic benefit to me doing that, but I've always fantasized about being able to do it. Okay. Blood sport style. But the other problem that I haven't been able to solve, well, I'm working on it, but quite frankly, and this is not something I expect people to sympathize much with, but I'm good at saying no. I have to get 100 times better. I mean, I say no to 99 out of 100 things that come my way. Yeah. But I have to get to the point where I'm saying no to 999 out of 1,000 things.
Yeah. I mean, I saw your email backlog. It's insane.
Just, even with all the filters, all the structures, the
assistants, the gatekeepers,
even with all of that, the volume is incredible. And I think that.
So how do you solve that?
I have to create systems, and I also have to I think ultimately upset a lot of people, and I'm not used to that. I'm accustomed to being able to sort of politely decline a lot of things, and some people will take it personally, but it's going to have to get to a point where nobody on my team even acknowledges receipt of 99% of what we get. Wow. And people will get very upset by that.
Wow.
And it's an interesting transition for me. I mean, there's a great book written by Derek Sivers. I think it's Anything You Want. I could be blanking on the title. It's very, very short. Derek Sivers is a fascinating guy who built up a company called CD Baby, sold it for, I think it was 24, 27 million. Gave most of it to charity, as I understand. And just like a philosopher king of the first class, a really fascinating guy. And one of his chapters, which I think started as a blog post, but he talks about it. He talks about the few situations he's been in, and then saying no if it's not a hell yes. So if it's not a hell, like an enthusiastic hell yes, it's a no.
I like that.
There's nothing in between. It's not okay, ping me in 2 months. It's not maybe, why don't we talk about it next quarter? If it's not like, oh my God, I have to do this right now, it's a no.
It's a no.
And
that's interesting.
That you end up having to throw out a lot of very cool opportunities if you take that lens.
But it's not a hell yes.
Right. And particularly when, let's say I get a cool opportunity to come to me, or even an email introduction from somebody I know, but it's one of 999 other such introductions. If I even reply,
oh my gosh,
it'll turn into another 2 or 3 emails. Very oftentimes, because people have been taught to be persistent. And I will tell you, with busy people, being overly persistent is not a good thing. You have to
have patience.
Hear the message.
Yes.
And in retail, it's location. With reaching out to busy people, it's timing. Like wait until the timing is right. And how is the timing right? For instance, like if I want to reach out to a A-list celebrity to be on my podcast, I am going to try to figure out through back channels or their managers or whatever when they are going to be doing press junkets to promote something they're doing, because that is when they'll be scheduling all of this stuff. And I will not waste my breath and infuriate the team by trying to be insistent outside of those pockets of time.
Sure. That's smart.
Because they are just as busy, if not more busy than I am.
Yeah.
So that was a long answer, but
the
saying no, I have to get much better at, and I think I'm going to have to publish pretty soon a couple of sort of public declarations of
like a manifesto,
email bankruptcy. I'm taking a startup vacation for the next 6 months. Like don't send me any email intros, et cetera, et cetera.
And if you emailed me in the last 6 months, I'm not getting back to you.
Sorry, I can't get back to you. Yeah,
amazing.
And it's going to piss off a lot of people, but I think at the end of the day, there is a point where you have to choose between your own sanity.
And pleasing everyone else.
Yeah. And even if you try to please everyone else, you can't. So it's really no choice at all.
You please yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Or just save yourself as a starting point.
I think was it Warren Buffett who said the difference between successful people and really successful people is that really successful people say no almost 100% of the time.
Right. Yeah, he said that, and then also I think it was Steve Jobs who said, oh God, it was, and I'm misquoting, but it's something along the lines of, to do anything great, you have to say no to 1,000 things.
Amazing. And say yes to one thing.
Yeah, exactly. Basically, so that's something that I think I'm very good at. I'm better than I think the vast majority of people I've bumped into generally, and that's by training, not by any innate ability. It's just through training, but I have to get better.
Yeah. Okay. All right. A couple quick questions left. One is, if all of your books and all of your writings were deleted, everything you've ever put out there on a blog post, it's the last day of your life, 150 years from now, because you've extended it, everything's deleted, and you had 3 truths about life to write down and pass on to your family and to the world, what would those 3 truths?
Jesus, man.
Well, and you couldn't, all the information you've learned, all the stuff you've written, the millions of books you've sold, what are the 3 things that you would say are true about life as you know it?
Yeah. That is a very large question, Lewis.
I said it was a quick answer.
Yeah. Long pause followed by short answer.
It doesn't have to be perfect, but what comes up for you?
I'll give you 2. So the first 2 that come to mind are, you're the average of the 5 people you associate with most.
I like that.
Financially, physically, emotionally. And if someone tells you you have to do something or should do something, ask them for the evidence. Ask them what evidence suggests that. And the underlying theme being test assumptions. You have to test assumptions. I have to do this or this. Really, like what evidence do you have that suggests that I'm limited to those two options? And if they can't answer you, then you shouldn't take that advice.
Right.
There's a lot of speculation and just making up of the rules as we go along. And I think that people get trapped in prisons of their own making because they accept limitations that other people place on them or that they place on themselves just as often. So, if you or someone else says you have to do X or you should do Y, ask what evidence is there to support this.
Okay, those are great. Do you have one more that came off the top of your mind? One more truth?
Treat health as number one, because without it, everything else will fall apart. And with it, everything else becomes easier.
I like that. Very cool. 3 books you'd leave behind if you could only leave 3 besides your own. What would the 3 books that you would recommend if, you couldn't even have the 3 truths and no writings, but you're just like, here, family and friends, 3 books is all you get. What would that message be?
It's toughy. The first 3 that come to mind, I mean, I'm a book lover. There are many, many books that I love, but the first would be Letters from a Stoic by Seneca. The second would be Zorba the Greek, Zorba the Greek, which is a novel with a lot of similar messages, I feel. A close cousin to that would be Vagabonding, but so I'll give one.
Which you gave to me, I have over here somewhere up on the shelf.
Vagabonding. It's a great book. So Letters from Stoic by Lucius Seneca, which is 2,000 plus years old. Then Zorba the Greek, and then last, just one for, I suppose, business career purposes, the 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing.
That's a good one. Yeah, very cool.
I think those will take people pretty far.
Very cool. I like it. Well, okay, let's wrap it up. Again, make sure to go to your site, but also to iTunes and get the show that's coming out.
Definitely. So the Tim Ferriss Experiment, you can search for it on iTunes, or it should be available if you go to itunes.com/Tim Ferriss also.
Very cool.
But when in doubt, you can just search the Tim Ferriss Experiment. It should pop up somewhere.
And it's on your blog as well.
Yeah.
And what is a question you want to ask for the listeners that they will answer on the comments of just about any question you may have for them?
Yeah, for sure. Well, sort of in the spirit of the show, trying to show people that they can do a lot more and much in very short periods of time than they ever thought possible. If you could become world class at any skill in the next 6 months, what would that skill be? And particularly if it's something that you dreamed of and put up on a shelf and gave up on.
Right.
What is one skill you'd like to become world class at in the next 6 months, which means top 5% in the general population in the world?
Very cool.
So if it's tennis, you don't have to win Wimbledon. Right. It's not, don't measure yourself against professionals, but like top 5% in the general population. What is one skill in the next 6 months? Because I think that's plenty of time.
How do you get connected to the heart after that in an industry that is all about ego?
Well, I think sometimes, at least for me, and you've probably noticed this more than me because you've been at this game where you're interviewing these movers and shakers. Majority of people, they have that story of just depression, that story of like it all went to shit for me, and where you stop believing in yourself and you suck and you're just not good. Where it can bring you to your knees,
Yeah.
And that's what happened to me. I was brought to my knees, where I
literally
was on the bottom.
or figuratively.
Literally, where there's clips of me dropping another ball and just hitting the earth, the grass, out of frustration. And I would go home that night and I would be crying in my room, drinking a bunch of alcohol and crying and just spiraling out of control.
Wow.
And a lot of people, maybe they go through it differently, but I think that's part of the process. I mean, that's part of you coming face to face with who you really are. And what are you going to do about it now? And I think from there, that's how you learn. At least that created a real hunger for me to go out and actually study the great ones.
Yeah.
Study the people that have had great success because it leaves clues.
That's true.
I don't know who quoted that. That's not my original. Success leaves clues.
Right.
But whoever said that, it's wise because the formula for success is there. But we all have these stories that I'll come in here and I can tell you my story. There's underlying, like there's always stories of jealousy. There's stories of, okay, I'm not good enough. There's stories of I don't have what it takes, and the self-doubt and all that, and envy and all that stuff wrapped up in different stories. And that's just mine. And I was able to start reading books, reading about people's lives, biographies. Then you start reading Mind, Body, and Spirit. Those are the type of books I like to read. And then learn from that. And then you start learning how to use vision. Close your eyes. That helped me a lot.
Yeah.
Was just getting to where every morning and every night, kind of the first thought on my brain was, okay, how am I going to get better at what I do? Maybe that's a feeling of love too, of like I love playing football. I don't love practicing per se, but I love catching footballs. And I fell in love with that. And I fell in love with the process of what it takes to be great. And I came up with this routine of success. I called it that. That was my routine of success. And I did the numbers. I wish I had them. I should have brought them. But just to put it in perspective, because I fell in love with the sport. Because if you're not in love with what you do, you're going to have to use a lot of discipline. And I always say, if you love what you do, the need for discipline will disappear. Discipline is great in a lot of areas of life, and you need it. But when it comes to what you are doing for a living,
You're excited to go.
You want to be excited. You want to be like, okay, yeah, it's a grind, and I'm working my ass off, but where else would I rather be? And so I went from catching maybe 30 balls of practice, which as a receiver, you know this. Most guys go out there, they'll catch about 10 balls to warm up. And then throughout practice, as a starter, if you're one of the main guys who catches balls on the team, you'll catch 7 balls at the most during practice. At the most.
The play doesn't fall apart. If everything goes your way.
We're talking 7-on-7. You're not catching anything 9-on-7. Like, you don't catch that many balls. And then after practice, everybody goes in. So I'm catching maybe 30 balls, like the rest of the NFL does. Believe it or not, that's all they catch a day. Where I said, you know what, I got to come up with a different routine. Because Michael Jordan does this. Michael Jordan gets 1,000 shots. Like I said, you want to be like Jerry Rice. This is what I started studying Jerry Rice's routine.
That's
I'm like,
freak.
I'm like, holy shit, these guys are putting in overtime.
Yeah.
But you have to love what you do in order to do that. Otherwise, you'll quit. You'll do it. I've had guys that watch me and they're like, oh, I want to do what you do, and they quit. They'll do it for about 2-3 weeks. It's because they haven't fallen in love with some aspect of the game, and if you don't do that, you won't do it. So I caught 30 balls. I went from catching 30 balls a day to now catching probably 300 balls a practice. And you add that up. And the difference, I did it over my career. I remember this number. It's somewhere around this number. If after that third year, so 15 years, I played 17 years. After that, going from my third year to the end of my career, if I would have kept doing the routine that I did before, I would have caught 20,000 balls over my career. That's including practice and then games or whatever. Who knows?
At 30 balls a day.
At 30 balls a day. The way I did it now, since I'm catching 300 over the 4 days a week or whatever it is, don't do. I have the numbers, so people out there are like, all right, that math doesn't add up. Math's not my strong suit. But I did it. It was like 245,000 balls I've caught. So you just do the math: 20,000 to 240,000 balls caught over a 15-year span.
Wow.
That's what will make you a Hall of Famer. You know, but let's not fool ourselves. You won't do that if you're not in love with your sport and you're not doing the vision, the confidence, closing your eyes, putting yourself in that game, speed, that smell of the grass, looking up at the crowd, seeing the happiness from my coaches. Like I would do this before I even played the game.
Yeah.
I do this with my kids now. I have 4 kids. And I do guided meditations, and I've seen a result. Like
amazing.
It changes everything when you play the game in your head before you go out there. But it has to come from your heart. And I try to open my heart when I do these visionary exercises or meditations or whatever you want to call it, because that's the most powerful thing on your body. That's what your coach always says. Get your head out of your ass and get your head out, get out of your mind. You're too in your mind, and play with heart. And that's what that means. And that's when you can get to that point, and there's plenty of ways to do it. I have my ways, and everything takes off.
Yeah.
Everything takes off.
Do you think you would be in a Hall of Famer if you just stuck to 30 balls a day?
No.
Because people would say, well, you're so talented, you're 6'5", you're 250 pounds, you've got the natural athletic ability. You don't think you would have made it?
No. Well, judging off that year, I mean, I dropped all those balls doing it that way.
Right.
And like I said, let's not mistake. Don't act like I wasn't that guy who was out partying and chasing girls and stuff like that. I mean, I did a little bit of that, but I was in control. It wasn't.
You were disciplined. You were showing up.
It wasn't hard. It wasn't because I wasn't working hard. I worked hard as soon as practice started. For that 2 hours, I'd go out there and bust my ass just like the rest of the guys on the team. But I didn't do anything before that, and I didn't do anything after that. It was like that was it, and then I'd go home and I'd be back in my regular space where you can't do that. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, it might get you in the league. It's not going to help you excel in your league, whatever industry or business you're in.
Whatever industry or business, talent is, they say talent is overrated, and it really is. Don't get me wrong, you need some talent, and pick what you're good at. But if you want to be an excellent, you want to be a mover and shaker, you want to be somebody that has a legacy at what you do, if that's important to you, this is the way to do it.
When, after that third year, when did you face the most self-doubt?
Honestly, after that, self-doubt never got in again.
Wow. Really?
Never on the football field. Like I said, I was gonna go out there. It was all routine now. And
big games, Monday night games, playoff, nothing.
Never, ever, ever. In fact, the bigger the game, the more honed in I got. My better games came when the stage got brighter and bigger. In fact, you'll go from a point where now when the games you're supposed to win, the competition's not as high. That's what you have to concentrate on.
Oh yeah, because you bring your game down.
Yeah, you don't want to bring your game down. You have to excel. Yeah. And I think it's all routine and just that Michael Jordan, Kobe, Richard Branson, Michael Jackson. He was another. I mean, I could show you clips from Michael Jackson where he's like, I don't know where it comes from. He'll tell you. And that's how it is. You feel like that as an athlete. Like you're just out there in that flow. It's just flowing through you. And I remember Michael Jackson, they were interviewing some of his dancers. And they were talking about how he prepares for each show. And they were saying how Mike they would rehearse until 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning. They'd start around 6 o'clock at night and go till 2, 3 in the morning. The same routine.
Over and over again.
Over and over. And then they know they got it. And then Michael back, come on, man, let's just do one more. Let's just do one more. And I remember going, wow. And Michael even explained it. He's all, you love it. Like this is, now you are where, and the hard part is finding that, finding that passion, finding that love. But I believe, especially for young people, if you just got to keep putting your head out there and be willing to get it chopped off because it's going to come. I wrote a letter to my kids at the Hall of Fame that the critics are coming. The pain is coming. You have to go through that. That's where beauty is, or the fear. And I always talk about that. Like life takes off on the other side of fear. And you have to be willing to sit there in it and ride that wave.
Yeah. When you started to get it criticized a lot for maybe those first few years, and I'm sure you got criticized from the next 15 years after that for certain things, how did you face the judgment, the critiques, he's washed up or whatever, different ages,
I love it. I mean, that's all fuel. When people tell you that you can't do something, for me, the way you take that is say, okay, well, I guess I got to show you that I can do it. And when that self-doubt comes, I got into a good place, a good rhythm, where for football, that doesn't matter. Now, and I'm sure we'll get to it. Now, the transition, after I get done playing, that's where all that self-doubt comes back, and that fear comes back, and the anxiety. It came back to me.
Did you feel that right after you retired?
You feel that, right after you retire. And I had a job. I mean, I went straight into working for CBS.
Yeah.
Being on national television, the main desk that every job that every player who wants to do television wants. But I had to go through the same thing again. I got beat to my knees again.
Really?
Huh. Yeah.
How so?
I remember I was after my third year working for CBS, and I loved it over there.
Sing a theme here. 3 years.
Yeah, it's funny. 3. It's funny. The same thing when I was younger too. 2 years of Pop Warner football, and finally took off my third year in freshman. 3. But I made the transition. I'm working for CBS. I'm on the main desk. My contract is coming up, and I loved working there. It was shot out in New York, but I did not like getting on the plane, going back and forth. And even more than that, I wasn't giving them everything that I could give them. Not because I wasn't trying either. I was trying. I was working my ass off.
What weren't you giving
Meaning
them?
I wasn't coming from a place of in my heart. I wasn't like on the football field. That flow never happened for me when I was over at CBS.
It was kind of a little bit forced here and there.
It's forced. It was in my head the whole time.
Yeah.
Like, hey, well, if I say this joke here and I punch it with this word, then it's going to get a laugh. Or when I am talking about, Rob Gronkowski running his routes, I'm going to talk about it from this angle, and you can do all that. But if it's not here, it comes off as rehearsed. It's not a good performance.
Yeah.
You're performing, but it's just not good. And it doesn't feel good to me. That sucks. I was having anxiety before shows. Nervous. And I don't want to feel that way.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong. You're going to have that excitedness. I mean, you need to have a little bit. That helps you run faster. That helps you perform better. You want a little butterflies. But mine was from fear. I was so scared that I was going to screw up every time, and scared of showing who I really am, because what if that's not good enough? And so you work your ass off trying to do it funny, or to do it without stuttering, or whatever it is. I mean, and a lot of guys struggle. Just watch players that make that transition on TV. It is hard because you have to show who you are. You have to put everything out there, just like you're on a football field, just like I'm talking to you right now, whatever. I don't care if you're a doctor, you're a lawyer, or you're a construction worker. It's hard to let everybody see who you really are.
It's even harder because it's your singular voice and you on camera, maybe with one or two other guys or girls, as opposed to a whole team, 20-something people on a field being criticized. You can't hide as much. On camera, right?
No, you can't hide at all. They're picking up
hide
everything.
Your voice, yeah.
You can't.
You don't
hide
have to
everything.
speak on the field, but you just use your talents.
And that's where a lot of people, it's like, well, on the football field, I can just be physical. But here, I got to use my mind now, and you want it to be entertaining, and you want to say something good and something profound. But that talk right there, it's like, shut up, just shut up and go, and just speak, just talk. You know this game. And that's what I would tell all these guys. And they gave me this guy that I had to work with. I'm not going to say his name, but it just wasn't for me, because it just puts you more in your head. And maybe you have to go through that. But I remember it hit me. I was sitting, we're on vacation in Spain, just me and my wife sitting in a courtyard in a cafe. And she starts talking about the contract negotiations with CBS. And I'm almost done with my contract negotiation. And I'm going to negotiate another 3 years.
Wow.
But I kind of don't want to be there. And I never told her, I never told my management team or anybody else. And I'm sitting there, and the wife's all, so you got to be pretty happy with it. It was a good deal they offered me. And I'm like, yeah. And then
good money, great deal, yeah.
And all of a sudden, this wave of just fear came over me. Like my body started getting cold, and I started sweating, but at the same time sweating. And I had I don't know if it's a nervous breakdown, but I was like, oh shit. And it was the feeling of fear, just like absolute fear. And the thought came into my head that, what if I peaked? What if the best of me is over? And that's a scary feeling to be in.
Yeah.
I did not like that. And I started crying. And she's like, what's wrong with you? In the middle of this Spain. And when I'm not bawling or anything like that, but I started tearing up, and I'm like, and she's all, I just don't know. I have, over the last 3 years, I have not felt how I felt, that aliveness, that excitement. I haven't felt it in 3 years.
Wow.
For what I do. And this is a lot of football players go through this.
A lot of it, pro athletes, people transitioning into the next stage of life. Yeah.
Anybody transitioning. Yeah. And because I've talked about that. I've told that story before in front of groups. And after the show, I've had men come up to me with tears in their eyes, and they're like, I felt that same way. I had a company that it was successsul for 10 years, and then I made the transition out because I wanted something new.
Even if you sell a company for $100 million or whatever, it's like, now what?
How do you get back? And then you doubt yourself. You're like, I'll never be great again like I was on the football. And obviously, I had a great career. Yeah. It's like a Hall of Fame career, and you're like, so now I never get to experience that again.
Wow.
And I'm 40 years old at this time. And I'm like, I got 40 more years to live, 50 more years to live. And I'm going to be talking about football games, talking about old, like
30 years from now. Yeah.
It was
the glory days.
It was a scary feeling. But I'm glad that happened, because off of that, I called up my manager, Constance Schwartz, and I called up my agent, my television agent, Jim Ornstein. And I said, hey guys, I think I don't want to. They're like, yeah, it's a good deal. We're good. We've been negotiating back and forth. It's over. And they're like, I think I'm having second thoughts. I don't want to do it. And they were both like, shut up. Yeah, right. And then, my agent was like, this is a mistake. I mean, these jobs don't come along, and you're not gonna get a job at Fox. I mean, that's Terry Bradshaw, Howie Long, and Jimmy and Strahan.
Yeah.
Like, there's no room over there. And I mean, what are you going to do? And I said, I don't know, but I can't not do this. I cannot live like this. I'm so tired of being afraid. Being afraid when I'm on air. I'm tired of being away from my kids because that was getting to me, flying back and forth to New York for 26 weeks a year, from LA. That's a long hike. And, I was like, I'm out. I don't know what we're going to do, but I got it. Something's going to work. And that really changed my life. That was like another pinnacle moment in my life, that I could either go this way or I can go that way.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm going that way. I'm going to go to the road. That I don't want the sure thing. I had people close to me, the loved ones, are like, are you a fool? Like, you can't walk away from that. And I'm like, well, something's going to work. And that's where the phrase life takes off on the other side of fear. I was like, I am afraid right now. There's no doubt about it. This is scary. But I believe that's where the good stuff is.
Yeah.
That's where the gold is. That's where the diamonds are made. That's where you will achieve greatness. If you go up to what you're afraid of, but in your heart you have to do. But you go anyway. I'm not talking about skydiving if that scares the shit out of you and you're like, I don't want to, but that's not in your heart anyway. You don't want to do that and it scares you. I'm talking about the stuff that you want to do, but you're scared to do, but you feel it. That's where you got to go. And that's where you got to have the cojones, or whatever you want to call it, the moxie, the balls, whatever you want to call it. You got to have that and go through that. And there's steps out there, and there's people that will help you if you just ask for help. And there's books, and there's School of Greatness podcast. There's Wide Open, what I'm trying to do. My podcast. It's all over the place. It's all around you. And the only thing that's stopping you is that fear. And just go for it.
Before we continue this video, make sure to subscribe below and turn on the notification bell right now so you don't miss out on these great videos every single day.
You think that you need to feel confident or courageous in order to get started. You don't. You actually just have to start, and that's the riddle of life. That lying in bed, hoping that you wake up some morning motivated to change, that's not the answer. You actually have to learn how to push yourself. You have to learn how to leverage the power of your decisions, and you've got to learn how to take action when you don't feel like it. Because every morning when I woke up, I did not feel confident. I felt like a loser. Yeah. I felt like the world's worst parent. I felt like I had failed at every single turn. I did not know if Chris and I could pull out of the spiral. I did not know if we were going to go bankrupt and lose the house and move from our community. I did not know if our marriage would survive. I knew I wanted it to. And see, this is the knowledge action gap. You can know what you want. You can know what you should be doing. But how do you make yourself do it when the feelings and the motivation isn't there? When all you got is fear? And so every night I would lie in bed and I would say to myself, all right, that's it, Mel. Tomorrow, it's the new you. Tomorrow, you're going to wake up and be motivated. You're going to get up. You're going to exercise like everybody says you should. You're going to meditate. You're going to get those kids on the bus. You're going to screw Fox. You're going to look for a job. You're going to cold call Cox Media, and you're going to do auditions. Come on, girl, let's go. You're going to take a cold shower. Woo! Here we go. And I meant it when I was saying it. Maybe it was the alcohol that was talking, but then I would wake up and I didn't feel any of those things. So I would hit the snooze. And I would hit the snooze. Now, why was I hitting the snooze when I knew it wasn't the right decision? I'm going to tell you why. And this is something that I was blown away by when I discovered it. You don't make decisions with your goals. You don't make decisions with your prefrontal cortex. You don't make decisions with logic. Do you know how we make decisions? I didn't invent this. A neuroscientist by the name of Damasio, who does his research in Brazil, who gave an incredible TED Talk and wrote about this forever and ever and ever. We make decisions with feelings. 95% of our decisions are made by how you feel in the moment. And that is the problem. You need to take control of the moment and leverage the power of your decisions and make them up here. Because when I was lying in bed, I wasn't saying to myself, I should get up because that's going to help me start my day right. I was saying, do I feel like getting up?
No, you don't.
No. Do you feel like making that cold call? No, you don't. Do you feel like doing that third set of reps? No, you don't. Do you feel like having that hard conversation? No, you don't. Do you feel like ending this relationship, whether it's in business or in your life, that is sucking you dry? No, you don't. We make decisions based on our feelings, and that is robbing you of joy and opportunity. And it is blinding you from the fact that how you change your life is 1 5-second decision at a time. One push at a time. And if you accept the fact that you may never feel ready, and you may never feel motivated, and you may never feel confident, you may never feel courageous, and that's okay, but you can still push yourself forward. What happens over time is as you start to see yourself becoming the person that takes action, that you start to see yourself becoming the kind of person that speaks even though your voice is shaking. You're the kind of person that has a bias toward moving instead of a bias toward thinking. Guess what happens? You build the skill of confidence and courage. And so what happened for me is I was stuck, Lewis. I mean, I was so stuck. We were heading straight for divorce. We were heading for bankruptcy. I knew I wanted to change things. And so one night I see this commercial. This is the stupidest story on the planet, but this is what happened. I see this commercial. And, again, I also was drinking too much. I mean, I probably had a couple Manhattans in me. Sure. That's my drink. I'm from the Midwest, just like you. Yeah. All right, little Manhattan there, little bourbon. And there was a rocket ship launching.
On a commercial.
Yeah. And I had this instinct, this innovation, this disruptive idea, right? Oh, my God, Mel. That's the answer. Tomorrow morning, you're going to launch your ass out of bed like a rocket ship. You're going to move so fast, you can't even think about your problems. Dumb, right? Mm-hmm. Totally dumb. See, he's like, this is the dumbest idea I've ever heard. I cannot believe I have this chick on my podcast.
No, I understand it. You got to get moving first.
Yes.
That's the thing. You just got to wake up at 6 a.m. or whenever it is and go into the gym. And when you're in the gym, you're going to start moving the first weight. Yes. And then you'll start moving the second weight.
Actually, people use the 5-second rule at the gym because you know how much time people waste at the gym standing around thinking about the next thing?
Probably 70% of the time.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So the next morning the alarm goes off and nothing had changed in my life. I woke up to the lien on the house, the fighting with Chris, the unemployment, the lack of confidence, the lack of courage, the whole thing. But I did something I had never done before. I went 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, just like NASA. I actually counted. And then I stood up and I was like, what the hell just happened?
Uh-huh.
What? That is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. The next morning I used it again. It worked. The next morning I used it again. It worked. And then I started to notice something, and this is one of those things. So we have an 11-year-old son who has dyslexia, and when they finally diagnosed him, it was as if, of course, it was as if how could we have possibly missed this? Are we the worst parents in the world? I mean, the kid can barely write, he can't cut his food, he doesn't no wonder he doesn't do team sports. Mm-hmm. It was right under our nose, and what I'm about to tell you is right under everybody's nose. There's a 5-second window between the instincts, the shoulds, the urges, the inner wisdom, the things that can change your life if you listen to it. Got a 5-second window from the moment you feel that instinct to move. And if you don't, your brain is actually designed to kill it. 5 seconds is all you have. The second you hesitate, and you feel yourself hesitating, that is a moment of huge power because what's happened is you've just started to pull back from something that you need to lean into. And if you count backwards 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and this is the neuroscience behind why this stupid little trick works, counting is an action. Counting backwards requires focus. It's also not a habit for you yet. So when you feel yourself hesitate you're triggering your mind that something's up. Like Lewis didn't hesitate when he pulled on his pants. He didn't hesitate when he's drinking his coffee. He didn't hesitate when he walked out the door to the gym, but now he's hesitating to make that call. Your mind now goes into a cognitive bias called the spotlight effect. It magnifies whatever it was that you hesitated doing.
The moment.
The moment. Yeah. Like all of a sudden you're like, hey, I don't feel like it. Like, I don't know. Maybe I'll do it later. Right. And your mind is doing it because your mind's trying to protect you. Hesitation signals a red flag to your mind that something's up. Just that small hesitation. It's a habit that we all have. Should you hesitate if you're getting a tattoo? Yes. Should you hesitate if you're gambling? Yes. Should you hesitate if you are signing a legal document? Yes. You need your prefrontal cortex for those things. You need to interrupt it, make a decision. Should you hesitate on making a phone call? No. Should you hesitate on speaking up in a meeting? No. Should you hesitate when you feel yourself starting to procrastinate and you know you got work that you should get done? No, you shouldn't hesitate at all. Should you hesitate in saying the thing that you really feel in your heart? No, you shouldn't. Should you hesitate and edit yourself when you're talking? No, you shouldn't. But we've all trained ourselves to. So it's actually this habit of hesitating. You start catching yourself. It's a huge moment of power because you have a decision to make and you got to make it in the next 5 seconds. Are you going to go on autopilot and get trapped in your mind? Or are you going to 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and awaken your prefrontal cortex and drive forward? So I started to use this rule as I noticed that every day, all day long, I had these moments of inner wisdom where I would know that I needed to pick up the phone and stop isolating myself. I would know that I needed to call a bunch of media companies and start auditioning for radio show hosting gigs. I knew that I should get out of bed on time. I knew I should stop myself before I snapped at Chris, right? Self-monitor.
Yeah.
I knew I should not let the frustration be the things that was driving me. And so I started to use the rule all day long. Whenever I felt this, I should do this, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and I would make myself do it. And slowly, 5 seconds at a time, my entire life started to change. And my husband used it in his business, and he and his business partner dove in. They went on to open 7 more restaurants. I went on to launch and sell 2 businesses and get recruited by CNN and join their team. I had a syndicated radio show that ended up winning the Gracie Award, which is kind of the female media, awards for the #1 talk show in the country. And, I never intended to tell anybody about the 5-second rule. First of all, because it's stupid.
Right.
I mean, come on, count backwards. That's the dumbest thing
Not
I've
stupid
ever
to
heard.
me, though. Anything that works for me.
That's true.
You know what I mean? I'll take any stupid thing.
That's true. But I also was like, how do you start talking about something like that, right?
Yeah.
So I was asked to give a TED Talk like 6 years ago, and TED 6 years ago, not the brand that it was today. They weren't even putting the talks online yet.
Really?
Yeah, the TEDx talks were not online yet. And so that was the first speech I'd ever given in my life. If you want to see what somebody looks like having a panic attack for 21 minutes straight, watch that speech. I was backstage, and it was like one PhD after another going out there. I'm like, what the hell have I gotten myself into? This is the dumbest thing. And so at the very end, I wasn't even planning on talking about it. I say, oh, by the way, there's this thing I do. That's it. I don't even explain it. And you know why I didn't explain it, Lewis? I didn't know why it worked.
So you didn't have the science or the research. You were just
Zero. And then something crazy happened. They put that talk online a year later, and people started to write. We've heard from more than 100,000 people in 90 countries that have written to us that are using the rule in ways big and small to change their lives, to change their marriages, to change their thinking patterns, to grow their businesses. We know of 11 people that have stopped themselves from killing themselves.
Wow.
In the moment, there's a gentleman that we talk about in the book, and you can see his social media posts in London. He was a veteran, and he was suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, and he boarded a ferry with the intention of jumping overboard. And he got to the railing, and he was standing there, and his inner wisdom kicked in. And this is another thing I want everybody watching to understand. I don't care what you're facing or how low you get. Your inner wisdom is always there. It is. And the thing is that we often don't listen to it. And so he's standing there intending to kill himself, and that inner wisdom kicks in. And he remembers the 5-second rule. And he goes 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and he turns and physically moves away from the railing and finds the first person working on the ferry and tells him that he's suicidal. Saved his life.
Wow.
he saved his life because he listened to the inner wisdom. And this is the other thing I love about this rule. It's not something to think about. It's a tool to use. So the part of the problem with a lot of the advice that I've found, for me personally, is that a lot of advice is all about kind of doing mental battle. And if I go upstairs, I'm behind enemy lines and I tend to get hijacked.
Right.
So I love this tool because 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 interrupts those patterns. It actually prompts the part of the brain that I need in order to change. And it makes changing easier because I've now got my mind working for me instead of against me. And it gets me out of my head. And so I'm super excited to share this rule with people because I now know not only that it's working, just not for me, it's working for people around the world.
If you're looking for more greatness in your life, make sure to check out this video right here. And also check out our free PDF, The 3 Secrets to Unlock the Power of Your Mind to help you change your life. Download it right here.
Skip a meal, but don't skip reading. Read something, a biography, read something that's a strategy, read something that's gonna change your life.